Are we ready? Are you ready?
Yes.
Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, November 12th meeting of the City Council. I wanted to call the meeting to order. First up, before we get to the official items on the business, we have a special event tonight. We wanted to welcome Councilmember-elect Laura Downs, and she's going to take her oath of office after winning the election from last Tuesday.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you, Laura T. Downs, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the City Council of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, according to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
And I just need your signature.
Turn on your mic.
Thank you. I'm Renee Andrews, Secretary of the Electoral Board, joined back there by, right here, by Art DeSalle and Dave Berkey, Director of Elections for the City of Falls Church. Don't go to your seat, Ms. Downs. We have a certificate of election to present to you. The Electoral Board met this afternoon at about 4 o'clock and certified the election, so we would like to present you with your certificate.
Go up here, we'll get a photo. Sure. Thank you all for your work. Or do you want us to hear? We'll send it. All right. A little further over. Yeah. Keep one more step. Photoshop the brothers in. Congratulations, Ms. Down, an official welcome. So with that, let's move on with our roll call.
Ms. Conley? And we'll do your remote participation after we call roll.
Here, I'm here.
Okay. Ms. Downs?
Here.
Ms. Flynn?
Here.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Ms. Underhill?
Here.
And Mayor Hardy?
Here.
Thank you, Council. And I believe Ms. Conley has, or there's a motion to allow her to participate remotely.
Who was the motion up here?
Ms. Connolly, could you identify your remote location and your reason for participation by electronic means?
I'm in Doylestown, Pennsylvania for Family Matters.
And I move that City Council approve electronic participation by Mary Beth Connolly in this meeting for personal reasons pursuant to the City Council's adopted policy.
Second. Hiscott on the second. Call roll, please.
Ms. Downs?
Yes?
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in, Ms. Connolly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, let's get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. It looks like we have lots of special young audience members tonight. Would any of them like to help us lead the Pledge of Allegiance at the microphone? Come on up. All of you.
I pledge allegiance. Oh, sorry, my bad. Go ahead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. Do we have a motion to adopt tonight's meeting agenda, please?
I move to adopt tonight's meeting agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, so with that, let's move on to our proclamation. Tonight, we have a proclamation declaring November 13th through 19th, 2024 as Transgender Awareness Week and November 20th as Transgender Day of Remembrance in the City of Falls Church. And this is how we always haze our new members, and so we would like to welcome Ms. Downs and ask her to do the honors to read our proclamation tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Hardy. It's my honor. Whereas the Falls Church City Council supports the bodily autonomy and human dignity of all members of our community, and whereas the school board and superintendent for the Falls Church City Public Schools issued a joint statement on transgender rights in Falls Church City Public Schools on September 20th, 2022, which assured the community of the Falls Church City Public Schools commitment to value and support every student in their charge, and uphold settled law and FCCPS non-discrimination and anti-harassment policies. And whereas the City Council appreciates the Falls Church City Public School Board's commitment to value and support every student in their charge, ensuring that all students are treated with dignity and respect in our schools. And whereas the City Council has demonstrated support for community members of all backgrounds and identities, including transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming persons, with Resolution 2010-13, a resolution in support of diversity, adopted March 22nd, 2010. And whereas City Ordinance 2002 prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation, which has been historically linked to discrimination based on gender expression and identity. And whereas city-run programs, events, and activities are open for all to participate in a manner consistent with their gender identity. And whereas the Virginia Human Rights Act and court precedents make it clear that government agencies and public schools have a duty to respect the gender identity of transgender persons. And whereas the week of November 13th through 19th is celebrated as Transgender Awareness Week, which seeks to increase the visibility of transgender people and the issues they face, including but not limited to prejudicial treatment, lack of acceptance, and violence. And whereas Transgender Awareness Week culminates in the Transgender Day of Remembrance, first organized in 1999 to commemorate the murder of Rita Hester, a transgender woman, and has grown into the recognition of the many transgender people lost to violence each year.
Now therefore, I, Letty Hardy, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby declare November 13th through 19th, 2024 as Transgender Awareness Week, and Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 as Transgender Day of Remembrance in the City of Falls Church, and call upon the community to lift up the lives and voices of transgender people, work towards eliminating discrimination against all transgender, gender expansive, and non-binary people, and honor the lives of those who have been lost to anti-transgender violence this year and over the years. Thank you all. I know we have a number of members of the audience who would like to speak related to the proclamation, so I would like to invite them to do so now before we receive the proclamation. And so,
Yes, and Sophie Kocher would like to speak first, and then I'll call everybody in turn.
great, thank you. Welcome, Sophie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to see so many people come out tonight in support of the proclamation. And as a member of staff, I just wanted to take a moment and talk about some of the things that we've been thinking about and talking about as we worked on the proclamation this year. So tonight, we're recognizing the week of Trans Awareness and Trans Day of Remembrance. And I just wanted to note that as we were thinking about the proclamation this year, we realized Trans Day of Remembrance that I just wanted to note that as we were, one second. To mute himself, okay. That we were thinking about how this is one of the saddest observances that we have in the City of Falls Church. A lot of the times we're super happy and celebrating, but these two observances sort of coincide with a somber time. And it's specifically the Trans Day of Remembrance we recognize because there's such a high volume of not just bullying and discrimination, but suicide and murder of trans people in the United States. And when you think about it, if we live in an environment where hundreds of trans people can be killed every year and it's not a national crisis, what does that say for the average trans person in their day-to-day experience? So I wanted to talk about some of the positive things that we're doing as a city to create a safe and welcoming environment for trans and gender expansive people, specifically within our workforce, having worked with queer people over the year and being one myself. One of the best ways we can honor all trans people who have died and suffered is by making a better present and future for those who are still with us. So I'm going to touch on some of these things. The proclamation notes that the city holds policies that affirm respect and dignity to all community members, and we can see this sentiment in recent sexual harassment training that our HR department has put on with an emphasis on gender and sexual identity. And this is helping inform the employee body on how to address discrimination against trans and gender expansive people in our workforce and when we interact with community members. We also have the Social Equity Action Team, which is an employee action group and a resource that employees can utilize to address issues of equity like discrimination against transgender people. Following the equity study we completed 2 years ago, we've implemented a facilitator program where we have certified employees who can act as facilitators and moderators when conflict arises, and HR is encouraging employees to reach out to them. They've already started to field some concerns over respect for trans and non-binary employees, and so that's proving to be a good resource for our employees to take advantage of. There are some things that we're currently not doing that civil rights organizations across the nation encourage employers to look into. The City of Falls Church offers highly competitive benefits, which we've talked about throughout the year, but we need to review if they address the needs of trans and gender expansive employees. Are our mental health offerings and employee assistance programs culturally competent in treating crisis for trans and gender expansive employees? Do we offer insurance plans that cover gender affirming care for employees or members of their family? Do we have a process in place to support employees who are transitioning? It's a very personal and emotional experience, but there's also a lot of bureaucratic changes that come with it, and do we make that a smooth process for our employees? Finally, one thing that is free that we're currently doing, we can start doing at any single moment, is building a culture where all community members and employees feel comfortable and welcome in city facilities. This includes respecting people's pronouns, being a welcoming, open, safe space, and also making sure that if employees or community members feel uncomfortable, if they receive unfair treatment or discriminated against, that they feel comfortable bringing that up and know it will be addressed and resolved in our community. So, as the proclamation notes, this is a great time to learn about those who've died, to honor their memory, to think about the historic and continuous struggle of trans people in the United States and across the world, and to commit to exploring and enacting more solutions that helps honor those we've lost and ensures no one else suffers the same violence. I want to thank Council for sponsoring this proclamation, again, as a community member, as a staff member, and I'm very excited to pass off the mic to the many people who also have comments tonight, so thank you.
I'm short, so.
You're going to go first?
Hello, my name is Whit Jenkins, and this is Cora Schroeder, and we would like to announce the gender awareness in Mary Ellen Henderson Middle School and the rest of the school, plural.
I've noticed a lot. Oh, yeah, that's okay. I've noticed a lot in different schools on, like, transgender youth getting discriminated, just, like, with the other children, but I think there's been, like, a lot of steps that I've noticed. There's, like, gender-neutral bathrooms and, like, more ways to like report if there's something going on. And I think this proclamation is just going to like help that like get a move on, and maybe a lot more people will see that this is like a really big issue.
I think everyone in this room can say that Falls Church is a relatively very safe community for people of all LGBTQIA plus community and students and people in general, as well as employees. We all feel very safe here, but there are still a few people who use sexist, racist, and ableist comments, especially against transgender and sexual orientation, I don't know if that's a word, peoples. And I think that as long as we have this proclamation, Falls Church will become a very, very safe and happy place for many, many people.
Thank you. And we'll call everybody up for a photo after we listen to everybody. Thank you. Next, we have Stephen Gorbos, followed by Emily Green.
Thank you for having me here tonight, and thank you for this proclamation and the support it projects for families like mine. We think it's important to have in the public record a clarification for all present who the people are that this proclamation protects. Transgender people are people whose gender identity differs from the gender they were assigned at birth. Non-binary folks are people whose gender identity falls outside the binary categories of male and female. We also think it's important to note that this is entirely separate from sexuality, and despite much political grist being made over the last several years, affirming a fellow human's stated gender identity is overwhelmingly supported by the major medical associations throughout the world. Surveys differ, but it's estimated that as much as 5% of the U.S. population identifies this way. That's roughly 750 out of the 14,600 residents of our city, or at the elementary level where my kids are right now, that's about 1.5 students in each of the grade levels. Trans and non-binary people have always been here, and despite the best efforts of many powerful people in our society, we will always be here. My family moved here because in the greater DMV area, our elementary schools in Falls Church City are uniquely safe and supportive for gender-expansive children. Our community is special in that regard, particularly at the elementary level. That is immediately apparent in a conversation I had with Tim Kasich before buying our house in Broadmont. And while we've had some ups and downs, the schools have really never let us down. But I can tell you, for kids that fall under this, it's a weekly struggle in that way. And there are things that happen, like our young people here just said. And the teachers really support them. We get a lot of great support from the school, so I want to make that clear. And it's literally night and day from where we lived just 20 minutes south of here in Fairfax County. We also noticed that our library in the school, but also in the town, routinely displays books that show families that look like mine, where my children can see themselves, which is so important. But it could be better. And proclamations like this are a nice start. While we feel relatively safe here, there's still a lot of systemic changes to make. For my family, that might mean changing enrollment forms for children's rec activities that even ask for gender in the first place in our parks and rec, the camps we sign them up for, the sports they're starting to want to play. And as they currently stand, they even go so far as to force a humiliating choice on families and only allowing a binary option when you register your kid that might not fit those things, despite statements to the contrary, which are really inclusive, and I know that there's a lot of good intention. Or, as was already said, provide non-gendered bathrooms in the city community center. Or, this is a big one, maybe even cut ties with bigoted groups in our community that are actively opposed to the beliefs expressed in this proclamation. So many of us also fear that because we are such a small group, there'll be efforts in the coming months to attack us, demonize us, silence us, and even take our children from us. I hope the city will back up this proclamation with real action to provide help and support when it's needed. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Next, we have Emily Green, followed by Jennifer Solomon. I'm going to set up the 3-minute timer for our public speaking, just so we make sure everybody gets through tonight. You'll get a warning, yellow light, when it's almost 3 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you so much for this proclamation. I'm a local resident and member of the community of parents and allies of transgender folks here in Falls Church City. And I'll use the word transgender broadly here to mean trans, non-binary, gender expansive. I would like to speak to the reasons why these proclamations are so necessary, as Sophie already said so eloquently. Acknowledging past harm can prevent future harm. 1/3 of all transgender youth have attempted suicide in the last year. A statistic that is even higher for Indigenous trans folks and those of color. Nearly 85% have considered it. More than 50% of transgender youth report depression. Youth, sometimes as young as 3 or 4 years old. Almost 70% experience anxiety, oftentimes prompted by laws and policies that threaten them. Nearly 40% of transgender youth experience housing insecurity. Again, youth. This is what is at stake when we are not affirming. Here, we are in an affirming space. If a higher government entity uses policies to signal or enact an agenda that seeks to deny the existence of trans individuals, to disallow their participation in sports, to force them out of healthcare, to separate them from their parents, if our government at various levels tries to do any of that, it not only has an effect on actual policy, it creates permission for hate. Permission for hate in cafeterias, coffee shops, at work, in classrooms, and yes, in bathrooms. The same is true, of course, for immigrant families and children with whom we stand as well. And so the big statistic for you, enacting state-level anti-transgender laws has increased suicide attempts among trans and non-binary youth in those states by up to 72%. That is what hate does. But here's the thing. We know that support and affirmation does the opposite. Transgender youth living in affirming homes are less than half as likely to consider suicide. That 72% statistic doesn't apply in states that are safe spaces. So you have power, we have power, together. I recommend that you consider establishing an LGBTQ+ community liaison, or at the very least, a listening session. There is more to address. But please, for now, know that this proclamation is not only words, it is safety. I want you to know that when you are faced with opportunities to protect transgender youth and adults in the coming years, and you will be faced with these opportunities, many folks in this community stand with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Jennifer Solomon, followed by Mary Catherine Chase.
Thank you. I wanted to come and express my support and appreciation to the council for making this proclamation. One of the many things that makes this city special is the warmth and the feeling of community that comes from being a place where people feel like they belong. It is so important that we make sure that it is a place where every child, parent, grandparent, neighbor feels safe and supported, regardless of gender identity or sexual orientation. This proclamation could not come at a more important time, and I encourage the city and our community members to embrace the core of what makes this a great place and take steps to continue to show support for all members of our community, including our transgender members of our community, and to listen to the many excellent ideas that I think are being shared tonight, and that could bring forth future actions that support members of our community. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Council, for this proclamation. I'm Mary Catherine Chase. I'm a 10-year resident of the city, and I'm also city staff. I want to especially thank Sophie for her coordination of the proclamation. Tonight, I want to share some of the resources that I've read over the years. These have been introduced to me by friends who are trans or married to trans people. They've been introduced to me by students. I come from working in higher education, and they've been invaluable in my journey and understanding the lived reality of the trans experience. I want to start with some first-person books that I think are excellent. I recommend them as audiobooks as well. Becoming Nicole by Amy Ellis Nutt. How to Be a Girl by Marlo Mack. My most recent favorite, Transgender Inclusion by A.C. Folks. Subtitles, All the Things You Want to Ask Your Transgender Coworker But Shouldn't. And then some really practical starting resources from Yale Medicine. Pieces written by the Human Rights Campaign, the Trevor Project, and the National Institute for Health, the NIH's National Library of Medicine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I believe we have members of the high school GSA that would like to speak, and then we'll have everybody come up to accept the proclamation.
Hello, my name is Sil Smith. I am the president of the high school GSA, and I just want to say that, this is like one of the, as a transgender individual myself, like hearing these things in the city that I live in is very much appreciated and very comforting, because it makes me feel like I can go outside and I am in a safe environment to just exist. And that is part of what, in my job as the president of our GSA, we work to extend that community within our school. And as a student, I've heard things in the halls. I know people will throw around slurs, they'll throw around insults and think it's not a big deal, even though when you live as that minority, you know it is a big deal, because you've seen people that you love and care die from that hatred. And so I am very much thankful that we are able to work together and create an environment where we are able to support and uplift people who go through these struggles. Thank you so much.
I know we probably have a few comments up here, so if you'll allow us to do some comments, and then we'll welcome everybody up. So first of all, I think Mr. Gorbo said it, but proclamations are a nice start. So thank you for all the eloquent comments tonight, and all of the folks out there who are both brave and vulnerable. It's really important that you share your story. And I think most importantly, to challenge us and hold us accountable to keep doing better. I think proclamations are a nice start, and there's clearly policies and work ahead, and I think we're all committed to keep working on that with you all. Any other comments up here? Vice Mayor.
Thank you. It's so nice to see everybody out here tonight and to have this proclamation. Sophie, thank you for putting it together. Speaking of being vulnerable, I'm the parent of a non-binary child. So I see you all, and I support you all. I'm a safe space as a person and as an elected official. Thank you.
I'd like to invite everyone who identifies as part of the community or an ally to come up and join us for a photo.
I don't guarantee this won't be as good as Sophie's.
You can get closer together, please.
Okay, ready? I got you
Madam Mayor, before folks leave, I just want to thank you all for taking time out to be here tonight. And in my view, creating a safe environment for everybody is why you have government in the first place. So thank you very much for being here.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to oaths of office. Do we have anyone in the audience here to take an oath?
I know Mr. Ed Henderson is. Do you want to go up here and... Oh, it's already on. Right. Mr. Henderson is here for the Historical Commission. Take your oath. There. Can you hear both of us? There we go. So raise your right hand. Do you, Edwin B. Henderson II, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Historical Commission according to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you. We appreciate all your volunteer work. Thank you. And I'll make sure this gets in the right place. You're good.
All right.
Thank you. Okay. What's that? No, I only sign these, so you're good. Do you, Alexander Maricola, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Historical Commission according to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, and you're sworn in, and we appreciate you volunteering as well.
Thank you both for your service. Are we ready to move on to public comment?
We're almost there. Yes, would you like me to summarize the written comments we received since your last regular meeting?
Yes, please.
All right. We received 2 comments. Andrew Olison provided comments on the CIP update, which you will hear shortly, and Paul Rothstein expressed concerns about pedestrian safety in regard to signage at the West Falls Church project. We do have some folks signed up for public comment, and I will call you individually. And again, we do enforce a 3-minute limit just to make sure that everybody has time to get their thoughts in. So I will call you if anybody else would like to speak. There are some forms in the back you can fill out just with your name and bring them up here, and I'll call your name. Thank you. First, we have Jean Gresco, followed by Alex Maricola.
Hi, I'm Gene Gresco, and I live on North Fairfax Street. I want to comment on last week's accessory dwellings discussion, specifically the issue that came up at the very end regarding existing unauthorized dwellings. At the library open houses, there were multiple side talks on this, such as, we know of one garage on Columbia where people live, or there are 2 such garage dwellings on Poplar. We are in the process of considering ADs by right, but we also have to eliminate ADs by wrong. The first step is changing the definitions that have hampered enforcement. I don't care if a person is sleeping on a sofa bed rather than in a defined bedroom, or is cooking on a hot plate versus a stove. I believe if you enter a space at night and don't come out until morning, that's a dwelling. As a second step, you need a way to identify such violations. Just as we have the anonymous reporting of cars without city stickers, thus catching those trying to avoid personal property tax, you need to do something similar to trigger city action. And lastly, we must have prevention by not allowing water or sewage lines for detached accessory structures. It's very hard to live where there isn't running water. So, if you're reviewing accessory dwellings, you also have to eliminate unauthorized ADs. I request the City Council add this element to the project. I look forward to hearing your discussion on this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Alex Maricola, followed by Emma Shainwald, who I believe is joining us electronically.
Good evening. No fun going around the issue here. I'm just going to talk about minimum parking right off the bat. Last City Council meeting, City Council bravely undertook an effort to really pull back some minimum parking standards in the city, and I congratulate everybody for voting that through. Thank you so much. But I'd like to bring it back to Council's attention to point out that all of the things that I and others have brought up about minimum parking, easy things in the city's laws are basically still completely enforced, completely untouched by Council's actions. There's still parking spaces for arcade machines. There are still parking spaces for horses. Civic organizations still need a minimum of 10 parking spaces regardless of the size of the space that they're occupying. All these crazy things still completely in effect, still on the city's books, still very bad. A couple months ago, during the vice presidential debate, both candidates for the vice presidency at the time brought up the need for more housing and more development of small business in America, and they kind of focused on this issue that there are a lot of unnecessary regulations, but there's also the problem of having to weigh safety and regulation, and there's a difficult weighing that needs to happen between those two things. And I just thought to myself, how lucky we are as a city that we have unnecessary regulations that have no impact whatsoever on safety that we can get rid of to help housing and help small business. I mean, we're really blessed, and I hope that City Council will act on this blessing and look at these standards and eliminate them entirely, or at the very least, really, really, really lessen them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Emma Shainwald, followed by Paul Rothstein. And for the folks who are joining us remotely, I will let you know when you get to the 30-second mark. So you have 3 minutes. And Emma, are you with us?
Yes, I'm right here.
Ah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Shainwald. I'm currently calling in from Maryland, but I'm a community member, former Arlington resident, and a member of Be at Place Collective. And I've spent a lot of time at the Eden Center in the past and also present. I just wanted to voice my appreciation and support for the decision to adopt the honorary naming of Wilson Boulevard to Saigon Boulevard. And really appreciate the city for working in collaboration with the Be at Place Collective and a lot of other Vietnamese community organizations to commemorate this really important location and the impact of our community historically and presently. And then also just wanted to say I have support for the clock tower design that was included in the most recent staff report. I'm not going to take up too much time because I know we have a few other people that are there in person, but thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Next, we have Paul Rothstein, followed by Renee Knepper.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Falls Church City Council. A copy of these comments can be found at tinyurl.com/fallschurchdoesnotcare. That's one word, Falls Church Does Not Care. And as it applies to the City Council and civil service of Falls Church City regarding pedestrians, it's true. I've included a link to pictures over an 8-day period after the October 27th City Council meeting. These pictures show the continuing problem. On October 30th, City Manager Wyatt Shields wrote that, quote, "We will provide the group here with a more detailed update next week on any further changes we will make with respect to pedestrian facilities during the construction period. That statement wasn't true. He did not respond last week. I see he's not there, so I don't know if there's an issue. In the email that contains these comments, I show how the latest fix as of Monday, November 11th doesn't work. At the link, I detail in depth the failure of Falls Church to solve the issue, which would take at most a few $100 for a project that's worth $650 million. At the November 7th community meeting with Hoffman, Chris Moore, Senior VP of Construction at Hoffman, said that Falls Church had approved the signage. Is that true? The signage throughout the site and its edge remains insufficient. Mr. Moore said that Hoffman has heard no complaints about this matter prior to my comments. It's likely that the people who are walking that area, mostly made up of people who bus the restaurant tables and otherwise serve the people who can afford to live at the West Falls project, don't know how to contact Hoffman or Mr. Shields or the City Council, or are too busy. One would hope that public interest lawyers like Councilmember Flynn understand that concept. However, as I pointed out in my prior communications, one of the walkers cursed when she realized there was a problem. And for the benefit of Mr. Moore, to whom I sent a copy of these comments, area residents acknowledged the problem on the next door site, Falls Church Development on Haycock Road. Anyone can find those comments at tinyurl.com/Falls Church Does Not Care. I'll conclude by noting for your constituents, the media, future election opponents of Mayor Letty Hardy and council members Debbie Hiscott, Aaron Flynn, Mary Beth Connolly, Justine Underhill, and David Snyder, and plaintiffs' attorneys representing the families of people who may in the future be injured or killed at that site, that copies of these warnings can be found in the 2024 folder at tinyurl.com/Falls Church Issues. That's one word, Falls Church Issues. Or you can submit a FOIA request to City Clerk at fallschurchva.gov for emails from me, Paul Rothstein, ROTHSTEIN, to City Manager Wyatt Shields, and any emails that include my last name after October 17th, 2024. It would just be great if you could just solve the issue. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to the Falls Church City Council.
Next, we have Renee Knepper, followed by Joseph Shirizi.
Hi, my name is Renee Knepper. I grew up in the area. I currently live in Arlington, and I'm a volunteer with Viet Place Collective. I want to thank the City of Falls Church for your efforts to rededicate the Saigon Boulevard signage and to honor the contributions of the Vietnamese community over many decades to the city and the region. And thank you for your collaboration with community organizations like Viet Place Collective. As the child of a Vietnamese refugee, these actions mean a lot to me as we seek to uphold and uplift the Vietnamese community's legacy in the DMV area. And I'm the proud aunt to 2 baby nieces, and it's our responsibility to pass this heritage on to the next generation. As for the sign design, my preference is also for the red clock tower with the yellow background. Thank you.
Next, we have Joseph Shirizi, followed by Quinn Nguyen.
Hello, my name is Joseph Shirizi. I live on Gundry Drive in Falls Church. My comments don't represent any organization. This week, the National Association of Realtors reported that the average age of a home buyer in America is now 56 years old. In the 2010s, this was in the early 40s. For the first-time home buyers, the average age of a first-time home buyer in the United States is now 38 years old. In the 80s, this was late to mid-20s. The artificial scarcity of housing enforced by poor zoning, leftover racial segregation laws, and just poor planning in cities across the nation is destroying the very fabric of our society. I asked City Council to act with as much haste as possible to adopt a green building policy, to adopt ADUs, and more sensible zoning and parking regulations as quickly as possible to spur sustainable housing development and address the housing shortage as a leader in the region. Even though we're a very small city, what we can do here is be a leader for others. And I want to live in a city where Fairfax, Arlington, Loudoun, Alexandria, DC even says, we can make these changes because they worked in Falls Church. And instead of being a laggard, to continue to have Falls Church be a leader going forward. I wonder how many boomers in the room bought their first home when they were 38, or if they can imagine how much harder and with less dignity it would have been to raise a family if they couldn't have bought a home until they were 38. No building equity. You have to move every year, so you're not building civic pride, and you're not engaging with your city. Collapsing birth rates, environmentally destructive suburban sprawl, and just so many other issues that are really destroying America. The people up here, you can do a lot, and it's not about the size of the city, it's about the issues that we take on and how much we choose to be leaders. Thank you. And the Saigon design with the clock tower is really beautiful. I hope we do that. Thank you.
Next, we have Quinn Nguyen, followed by Honam Nguyen.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Falls Church City Council. It's great to see you all again. My name is Quinn. I'm with Viet Place Collective. We want to, first of all, thank Falls Church City for your continued commitment for uplifting our Vietnamese community. Over the past year, starting with the addition of the listening session in January 2023, past 2 years, I guess. Then with the city's extension of the community outreach session, outreach period from March to April of 2023, and continued even after the East End Small Area Plan has been passed. We've been grateful for the city listening to and responding to the needs, concerns, and dreams of the Vietnamese small business community at Eden, as well as the Vietnamese community at large. The city's increased attention to and the recognition of the contributions of the Vietnamese community in Falls Church and the greater region have not gone unnoticed, so we want to thank you for that. And as you all know, throughout the East End Small Area Plan outreach, honorarily renaming Wilson Boulevard as Saigon Boulevard was a popular community suggestion, but not many people know that Wilson Boulevard was already honorarily renamed as Saigon Boulevard back in 2006. Technically 2005, I think that was when the proclamation was. And I have a feeling that some of you all on City Council weren't aware of that either, and that's okay. A lot of people in the Vietnamese community didn't know that it would already had that honorary name either. And I had done some digging, looked into Vietnamese media articles, and I had found that first there was a sign. First, Falls Church City and Fairfax County both got VDOT to place signs in the front of Eden Center, very close to the gate, as well as near the BP gas station. The sign at the Eden Center gate no longer exists, and the sign at the BP gas station is very low visibility. And so we have Viet Place Collective are imploring you all to make sure that the signs for Saigon Boulevard this time around are large, very strategically placed for high visibility. We liked the proposed locations that are in the staff report, so we support that very wholeheartedly. But my main point for talking about the history of those signs is that I had noticed that the staff report also mentioned that these signs would sunset after 10 years. And I wonder if that's just a city protocol thing, if it's possible for that period to be extended so that we don't need to keep reaffirming the contributions of the Vietnamese community here. Lastly, for just these signs to be maintained well in case of proposed maintenance so that our contributions will be honored for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen is our final speaker.
All right.
Okay, I'll start over. Good evening, City Council. Good evening, City staff. And good evening, everyone here. My name is Huai Nam Nguyen. I am a core organizer with Viet Place Collective, and I am a resident of Northern Virginia. I'm here tonight to voice my support as well for the Saigon Boulevard honorary naming. And I also am voicing my support for the installation of the honorary sign later in 2025. This is a huge win for the Vietnamese community, and it's very important for us that this honorary naming is happening to pay homage to what the Vietnamese community has done here. And it's also very important and a great win for the greater Falls Church community. So I don't want it to seem like this is just for a certain group of people. This is for everybody. It means a lot to younger generations as well as older generations, to everyone, whether they were impacted heavily by it or not as much. I want to thank the council and the staff for working with us to incorporate all of our ideas, to listen to our feedback, and to work with us on getting this honorary designation to this point. I wanted to especially shout out to Ms. Cindy Mester, who has been very helpful and extremely responsive to us and our concerns. I want to take some time as well to voice my support for the sign that is shown in the staff report, which is a red clock tower, yellow background. Personally, I think it's a great design because it is simple and it kind of embodies a less is more. Considering that the symbol will be just a small part of the sign, I think having any more details on it would be a little difficult to decipher from far away. So VPC, again, appreciates all the efforts done by the folks in this room and the folks who aren't here today. We're looking forward to planning an unveiling event later with the city and working with city staff on this happening next year. We also invite all of the Vietnamese organizations to come and join as well, and to partner with us and partner with the city to honor the Vietnamese Americans and to just celebrate what's going on with Saigon Boulevard. So once again, thank you.
Madam Mayor, that's the last public speaker.
Great. Thank you for all the public comments tonight. If we're ready to move on to the report of the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Hardy and members of council, members of the community. We are going to take the lion's share of tonight's meeting, city manager's report, to give you a update on the capital improvements program, and Caitlin Sobsey will provide that report. And then we will have a report from Cindy Mester on the Love Sculpture proposal and the bike shelter at City Hall. And then we'll have a quarterly update for the City Council on the council strategic priorities. Before we get to those items, I do want to just note that Paul Stoddard, our planning director, last week announced to us that he has that he plans to take a position with Alexandria City as a deputy planning director there, and we will wish him well. We'll also have an event for him later this month. He plans to take leave from the city in early December. But Paul has been incredibly active in this community and helped this community, I think, in many ways, working through the planning process and developing a very compelling vision for the future, and helping the community figure that out for itself. And I'm very grateful to Paul for all of his work and service to the city, and he will be very, very much missed here. One of the things that Paul got in motion, and that Emily Bazemore will be our staff lead for, is a partnership with the Urban Land Institute for a technical assistance panel for the Gordon Road Triangle. We do have a date announced for that now, and it'll be in late January, January 30th and 31st, where we will host the Urban Land Institute, and they will do a deep dive in opportunities and possibilities for the Gordon Road Triangle. And so, Emily, thank you for your leadership on that project. With that, then, I will turn it over to Ms. Sobsey for the CIP report.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Caitlin Sobsey, CIP coordinator, and I'm here tonight to give you a brief update on CIP. Okay, good. There are 42 active CIP projects as of this second quarter update. The breakdown of those projects are 9 public facilities projects, 6 projects in the Recreation and Parks program, 1 in public safety, 6 in stormwater and sewer utility programs, and 20 active transportation projects. There are also a couple future or new fiscal year 25 projects. There's just 1 remaining in facilities, and there were 2 transportation projects that will actually be deferred to fiscal year 26, as discussed in relation with the Greening of Lincoln project funding. And so those will be removed from future fiscal year 25 updates. Each active project is assigned a traffic light color as a method of reporting progress. There is green for on target, yellow for at-risk projects, and red for behind target. On page 2, which Sophie has up right now, is the active project summary. I'm just going to hit the highlights. We have 6 projects completed as of this update since the last quarterly report. 1 in the facilities program, that is the library HVAC project, was completed this month. 2 parklets, were completed at Triangle Park and South Maple. I know those will be renamed shortly. 1 stormwater study was completed, and 2 transportation projects. The WNOD Trail Crossings project was substantially complete in August of 2024, but as of this month, I actually saw them out there this morning working on the final punch list items, and there will be a final walkthrough for acceptance on Friday this week. And then the last transportation project is the ARPA crosswalks and ramps, those pedestrian improvements at multiple locations. Those are substantially complete as of this month, as of right now, and in a couple weeks, final completion pending some beacons that need to be installed. I also want to point out a typo right underneath of that completed project. There's the bus shelters. I don't have a line number. There you go. In the notes section, it notes that there are right-of-way delays for easement acquisition related to the Broad and Washington location. That should say Broad and Virginia. There is no Broad and Washington location, so sorry about that. Of the 42 active projects listed, the status report indicates that 76% of those are green or on target. That includes completed projects, which will be removed on the next quarterly update. 14% of those are yellow or at risk, and 10% of those are red or behind target. A couple recurring challenges that we're seeing with the red and yellow projects are some right-of-way acquisition challenges, delays resulting from right-of-way acquisition challenges, and also long lead times for construction materials. As far as the right-of-way delays, staff is working currently on reviewing and developing a new right-of-way process and procedure in Public Works and in coordination with the city attorney and the city manager's office to implement some improved procedures to improve our review internally, but as well as our coordination externally with consultants to try and address some of those delays resulting from that. On line 53, there's a quarterly trend analysis comparing this quarter's report with the first quarter update presented in July. Overall, we have over doubled our project completion rate. We did see a slight increase in the yellow projects and a slight decrease in the green on target projects. But overall, we added 7 projects since the last update. A lot of those were moved from the in development sort of new project list to the active summary. On line 61, starting on line 61, there's more information about our completed projects. And then on line 83, there's the project development table. So as I mentioned, there's 1 project in facilities, the rooftop solar study. That's actually being reviewed by staff now for the Aurora House roof structure, but the rooftop solar construction phase is still currently unfunded. We may remove that from this table for the next update as we put that we may consider that for funding in the fiscal year 26 CIP. And then these two transportation projects, these are intersection improvement projects that will be deferred until fiscal year 26. I'm also noticing now there's a typo for Hillwood and Annandale that says it's delayed to FY27. That should be FY26. Both of those will be deferred until FY26, and so those will be removed from the next update as well. Under pending grant applications, in October, staff submitted an application to the Virginia Department of Historic Resources for the Cherry Hill Farmhouse HVAC and roof replacement project. This project was actually adopted in the fiscal year 25 CIP as part of our general government facility reinvestment project planning. So we'll utilize funding from that program to provide for the required 25% local match for that grant if awarded. We'll know about the award status of that in December or January. And that concludes the second quarter CIP update. We'll return in early 2025. Not sure if that will be a standalone quarterly update or if we'll do that as part of the fiscal year 26 CIP process. We will be officially kicking off fiscal year 26 CIP next week, internally on the 18th, and then on the 20th, on November 20th next week, I'll present this same quarterly update to the Planning Commission, and we'll also formally kick off our fiscal year 26 CIP development process with them at Planning Commission. Soliciting feedback from them on priorities, and then we'll start working on CIP development, also reflecting the City Council's budget guidance and priorities as well. And I think that's all for me. Thanks.
Great. Can we pause here for questions and comments before we move on to the rest? Great. Vice Mayor?
Thanks. I have two quick questions, and one is just a follow-up on the Aurora House. Is it not being, are we not going to address it in this fiscal year due to funding, or is it feasibility and budget still to be determined? When we look at some of our later agenda item about budget, I'm wondering if there's opportunity to make sure we're addressing that there, because it's such a key part of our facilities management and our government energy operations plan.
You're asking about the Aurora House rooftop solar.
Rooftop
correct,
solar.
right, okay.
Yeah. I didn't know, are we not moving forward with that?
The feasibility is under review now. The study, it was done that's under review now. We can't move forward with, if it is feasible, we can't move forward with construction because there's no funding allocated for it.
Right, and my question is, when will we know how much funding would be required? If it is feasible, A. B, how much funding would be required so that C, we can make a decision if we could actually do that in this fiscal year. I would like to learn about the possibility of doing that and know what it would cost us to do so, because we have made some decisions later on, or that we'll be talking about later on, about putting some additional in capital reserves, and if capital reserves can be used to be spent on rooftop solar, which is one of our big goals, then I want to make sure I understand the feasibility of not just the solar, but of the timing and of everything. I don't want funding to be the sole reason it doesn't move forward.
Okay. My understanding was that we would know that the outcome of that sort of while we were in the process of fiscal year 26 budget development, and so that's why it made sense to sort of include that in the fiscal year 26 budget. If it happens sooner than that, I'm not aware of the exact schedule nature of that, unless anyone else is.
If you could keep us posted on that, I don't know if Annie, on when we know if it can be done and how much it would cost if we do it. That would be two pieces of information I'd like, because it'll inform how we spend CIP to support a government energy action plan. And then the second is a different conversation altogether, but one we've had before about doing some types of banners or signage when we're doing a CIP project so that our residents know, hey, this project is in place because we're investing our capital dollars in it. We talked about putting yard signs or some kind of indication that this is a capital expense that we've planned for, and basically to also highlight all the great work that a lot of the staff's doing in planning for it and executing our capital plan. So just throwing that out there, that somebody's still interested in feedback or ideas on how we could do that so that our residents are really aware of all the work that's being done.
Okay. I know we've been using yard signs for projects that are going into construction, but are you also suggesting a yard sign or some sort of sign for projects that are planned?
I guess it depends on the when it's going to be implemented. You don't want to put a sign up for something that's going to happen in our 2030 capital plan. But if it's, maybe it's pending, it's coming the next couple of months, it builds people's interest, then they know it's coming, they know there might be some disruption, but then they also know what to look forward to when the plan is implemented.
I think once you have a construction schedule, that would make sense.
Yeah.
We had talked about it. We had talked about it in relation to the upcoming community HVAC project, where, especially because of fencing and whatever else that may be going up around the community center, that it might be a good opportunity to have, an actual large banner, like on a fence, that explains why it is that the whole area is inaccessible and, what benefits the community will see once the construction period is over.
And education on what geothermal is and why it matters.
Yeah, there's actually a sign up at Meridian at the baseball field that says, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it says something like, use of one-time taxpayer funds to fund this baseball field renovation, something like that. So I think something, which I thought was a great message so people saw where their tax dollars were going.
Other questions or comments from Ms. Opsey?
I actually do. Speaking of the baseball field, I'm wearing my school hat here. So I see that there are awaiting permits for the baseball field and that the expected date is February 2025, which is tight because their season starts in 2025. Do we have any sense of how that is going with the permits, or does it seem like we will be able to get that field ready in time for the baseball season?
No updates as of a couple weeks ago when I spoke to Kristen and Brian. I know that they already have a contract executed to mobilize as soon as that permit is approved and as soon as they get all of the approvals that they need. There's the contractor that's doing the baseball field is also doing the turf replacement at
the stadium field, I think.
Yes, at the stadium, exactly. So and as soon as they are able to mobilize and start the turf replacement for both of those, it should be a matter of weeks. So it does look like February is still realistic.
Okay, great. And then my one last question is, well, two questions. Oak Street Elementary, is that the back side of Oak Street? It doesn't say, it just says Oak Street Elementary. I'm assuming that's the back side that they were doing some work there.
There's
a vestibule or something maybe?
Yes,
Okay.
security enhancements, a vestibule. I think the last thing pending, I should have put this in the notes, but the last thing pending, I believe, is the installation of some windows that were being replaced. I think the security vestibule is complete.
Okay, great. And then my final question is also school-related. Sorry, everyone. Looking at the concession stand, and I read in the notes additional $600K pending school board approval. So is that something that we would wait to see if that funding is approved before that we go take the next steps on that?
Yes,
Okay.
and I forgot to check that funding may have already been approved, and like I said, in the last 2 weeks.
Okay,
I know it was
okay.
happening either this month or early December for the school board approval. But yeah, said that everyone anticipated that funding being approved.
Okay.
And then, yeah, the schedule would carry on as planned.
Great, thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
Ms. Flynn?
I just had two quick questions. One is following up on a question Ms. Hiscott had raised about this paragraph at line 87 about the rooftop solar for both Aurora House and the community center as logical candidates. I thought that at the time that we started looking at the community center renovations that staff had sort of ruled out solar for the roof at the community center. And so I was just wondering about the reference there. And, I know that Mayor Hardy has talked about this in the past, that like when we're doing projects, I'm not looking to add to the scope of the project at this point in time, but it also makes sense to get the scope of the project like properly scoped at the point that we're doing the project. And so I guess
Do it right the first time.
surprised to see the reference to rooftop solar when we are now going into the community center project. And my understanding was that structurally there was some issue with rooftop solar, but if that's not the case, I'm just like, is this a seed for something that we're going to see in a few years, or is this just sort of market research being like you looked at the Nova little sun study things, and it showed these as the government buildings that get the best sort of sunlight for potential rooftop solar.
So I think, to provide a little more information on rooftop solar, so we've taken a look at the 5 municipal buildings for rooftop solar. We're not going to do anything at the property yard. Of the other 4 buildings, this building and the library have slate roofs. And so the several companies that we've talked to have been basically, you don't want to do that. Which leaves the community center and the Aurora House. And for us to put rooftop solar on those buildings, we have to evaluate them for structural integrity of the rooftop to support the weight of the solar panels. We're doing that evaluation now as part of some of the other ongoing work at the Aurora House. We don't have an answer just yet. I think some improvements need to be done for us to be able to install solar on that building. But I don't have the full answer on what that entails and how reasonable it is yet. And that's, I think, what Caitlin was alluding to, that we'll have here in the next couple of months. There have been concerns raised in the past about the community center for the same reason, whether it's fixable and a more thorough kind of engineering review of that we haven't done yet. And so I understand the point about the previous project, but that's kind of where we're at.
And then my other question was on, this has also come up before, so the reference to the WNOD trail crossings, and I know we're waiting on the Dominion Energy lighting, but again, Great Falls does seem pretty problematic, especially getting through there in the evening. I mean, there are people walking the trail after dark, and like you can't see people anywhere near the road unless you drive across the Great Falls Trail intersection with brights on to try to make that somehow visible. So I don't even know if there's a temporary solution or if we can even do like those, kind of solar, like garden lights in the meantime until we have some sort of lighting to both light where the median is so that we don't have cars hitting the median, but that we also have like some semblance of pedestrian safety there. So again, an update on timing would be helpful, and if there are any interim solutions.
I'll have to get back to you on the lighting on Great Falls. Or, yeah, there's some other public works stuff. Allie?
Wearing the CIP team. So with regards to WNOD, this week on Friday, we're going to be doing some final walkthrough to check the adequacy of the signage there. There has been reports that some of the signs are in the wrong place, so we're going to address those. There's also some looseness of the truncated pavers, especially at the North Oak Crossing, so we're going to inspect that as well. With regards to Dominion-related issues, the Dominion was, slowed down because of the storm. So the availability of the long lead items, including the 30-foot poles that we're going to be installing there, has been delayed. So we heard from Dominion that those are going to go in hopefully by maybe the first week or second week of December. And right now we're doing the planting of the crossings. And we also heard from Dominion that the 14-foot poles, the shorter ones, are going to go in probably towards the end of this month, maybe earlier in December. So.
And even before, like in the Great Falls median, there used to be the orange, like reflecting, just like the orange bins, the barrier kind of bins. And I think even as a short-term solution, like you just need something with some sort of reflective something there, property in that area. Because if you're looking at it in the day, you don't realize how much of a hazard it is in the night in the complete darkness for both drivers and pedestrians in that area. So I think that's all I had. The other thing on the signage, and I know we've gone over this with the cars potentially turning on the trail, and I know that transportation, you can only put certain signs together, but where it says stop new, is there any way to have something that's like stop trail crossing so that people actually know what it is that they're stopping for and that there's a trail crossing there as opposed to like a four-way stop of a road. So just to consider, what might be the correct signs to actually have there to have people have more awareness of why it is they're stopping and who they should be looking out for.
Yeah, I shared the ones that are on the WNOD across from my house, and that trail entry, I think I shared those with Wyatt, and it basically says no vehicle traffic. Like very large, very straightforward, and hopefully would prevent anybody from turning on it.
All right. Comments or questions over here? Okay, so I just have a couple general ones. So first of all, Ms. Obviously, thank you again for the discipline and the dashboard and sharing the update. I think obviously we have a large number of projects. We're executing on a lot of them. So thank you for staff and all of DPW for working on that. I have a more general comment. So coming as a former project manager myself, and this is evolving to be kind of be a PMO function, I would encourage us to use all the colors. And so let's not be afraid to use yellow, because I think I care less about the color of the projects and more about the actions it drives. And so I'm going to call out 4 in particular I think council has visibility on that I would actually consider yellow, because I think it's important for us then to highlight to management and to council what actions we're taking. So LED streetlights, I think those are behind due to various reasons. Fellows Park needs more money pending the budget amendment we're going to adopt. The South Washington Parklet is one that is also over budget and therefore at risk. Greening of Lincoln looks like it was a 3-month delay due to extending the public engagement. So those are all classified as green right now, but I think they're actually yellow/red. And so again, I just encourage staff to think about using all the colors because that's important for the actions. So that's one comment. My second one actually has to do with the ones that are in red. So for South Maple and Annandale, North Washington, Columbia, the Hawk Signals and Betos that are all declared in red, as the governing body, I guess, are there actions that staff is looking for us that we can help remove with roadblocks? Is it money? Is it prioritization? What can we do to help get those back into green?
Thank you for the comments. I think every single one of those red projects that you listed has experienced those right-of-way acquisition challenges or long lead items or both. So I think those are the 2 things that we identified that I reported on that we're trying to work through. We're working on the right-of-way process improvements right now internally, and we're also developing like some checklists for coordinating with our consultants and just making things all around easier and faster for us to do right-of-way acquisition, negotiations, any of that. Long lead items, not sure what we can do to mitigate that, but I think that's what we're working on right now. I mean, some of those are also pretty old projects that are kind of legacy projects at this point, so they're red because they're substantially, behind schedule, but point taken about the other greens that maybe should be yellow. Yeah.
Great. Well, it sounds like we just need to be more realistic about the time to do right-of-way acquisitions and procure items that might be backlogged. But again, look to us, I think, as the body that can help if it's money, resources. I think you need to challenge us to help with that prioritization if we are running up against those constraints. So the offer stands for future projects.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. With that, let's move on to the update on the Love sculpture as well as City Hall Bike Shelter.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. And Sophie, if you wouldn't mind the slide presentation. So at the request of Council and in coordination with the City Manager, we wanted to provide you an update on these 2 projects, especially since the Love Sculpture is proceeding as we wrap up the 75th anniversary. Next slide. That one is the quarterly review, so we just need the one that's for Love Sculpture. That'll be coming up after me. No problem. So this evening, what I want to do is give you an update on the Love Sculpture, the covered bike shelter, as it fits into the approved City Hall campus site plan. So if you could go to slide 3 for me. So this slide gives you a context of the approved site plan on the left. A lot of planning details for sure, but what is flagged in the large box on the left is that the 2017 site plan calls for a plaza at the front of City Hall at Little Falls and Park, and that's where we will be proposing the love sculpture. Also, the site plan at that time in the box on the right, in large for you, is called for the covered bike shelter. So I wanted to highlight that these are required and approved in the site plan for the City Hall campus and the renovation of the City Hall project. The graphic on the right is the permit plan for the bike shelter that is under review now. It has moved, and I'll have a closer up for you in a moment, moved to the front of City Hall versus the side, which is showing on the left, and we'll describe why that is. Now, to put those plans into context on slide 4, I took some nice fall pictures today to give you some context. On the left, you will see City Hall from the corner of Little Falls and Park, looking at the current City Hall Harry Wells sign garden with the City Hall in the back. On the left, I've superimposed the love sculpture template. That is at about 6 feet high for the sculpture, and the City Hall sign in the middle from the top of the sign to the ground is 6 foot. To kind of give you a context, because of the grade, it's sitting below the Harry Wells sign. The sign would be 6 feet high, and there's 4 bases for each letter, and they're 4 by 4. So it's about 16 feet long, and then the lettering is 6 feet high. And the plaza location is there where the site plan calls for it. On the right is a little closer looking at City Hall, and I've attempted to superimpose, and I will highlight that this is not to scale because it is me doing it and not our good planning or engineering staff. The covered bike shelter, which is 9 feet wide and 10 feet high. What's imposed there is 10 feet high, and it goes from the ground to a little below the camera on City Hall. If you notice, when you go in and out of City Hall, the cars parked there are 6 feet high from the ground to the top. So just to give you some context. Next slide, please. Speaking to the love sculpture first and then the covered bike shelter. This, as we know, was part of the 75th art celebration. There's $10,000 budgeted towards this component. This supplements the welcome sign and the chamber's art. This was developed as a general government employee competition. Those have been received, and there are 4 eligible submissions that have met the criteria. We were excited that there was a lot more creativity that came in, and we're envisioning honoring everybody with a collage that could be posted in City Hall. This will be metal, as is most of the love sculptures that you see around the communities, and it will be wrapped with vinyl, similar to the traffic control boxes that we've been doing artwork. The photo on the top with love and color, that's an example of a nearby town in Virginia. The one on the bottom is the one that the city rents for watch night, hence the snow in front of Independence Square. The links are to the state's website that shows the maps and the location and examples. And the bottom left graphic just kind of gives you a sense of scale of the 6-foot lettering to proportional to the 2 adults and child. And the next slide then gives you a little context of where we are in the process and how we decided the location. As noted, the plaza is required as part of the site plan, so we thought putting this love sculpture near that location would be a draw to people coming to City Hall, to events, to draw you into the campus because everybody loves to get their photo and gathering around the Love sculpture. So that was part of our concept for locating it there. It is an accessible area and will become even more accessible with the Great Street Park Avenue and the future plaza. It was also intentionally put there for some safety and preservation of the equipment and people. We didn't want it close to the playground equipment because then children naturally will think to climb on it, and that would not be desired. Did want to highlight that the plaza itself is not funded. When council approved the other 3 parklets, the one here at City Hall was not yet funded. On the right are some general concepts that had been drawn up during the early planning stages of what could a plaza in front of City Hall look like. This one has a lot of hardscape. We had some feedback at the time that to soften it, maybe change the paths and the flows so less trees were taken. All of that is still totally conceptual, not designed, just that the plaza needs to be in place at some point because it's per the approved site plan. The walking paths have been something that's been talked a lot about because people tend to go from the corner to City Hall and not linear down the sidewalk. So we want to consider and tie all that in. The process for doing the Love sculpture is, it is defined as public art, so it would go through the Arts and Humanities Council through those processes. It is also under our city charter because it's a monument and a public sculpture that will be received and owned by the public entity. It needs to go through the Planning Commission. Both the Arts and Humanities Council and the Planning Commission then would make recommendations for City Council. We would anticipate council will approve the design because you are the funders of this initiative. Right now, we have asked to be on the November 21st agenda of the Arts and Humanities Council, Planning Commission December 4th, and based on tonight's feedback and the outcome of those 2 meetings, we would love to come to council on December 9th to have this approved, and hence why we wanted to do an update today for you all before we started those timeline processes. That would allow us to do the fabrication and installation end of December into January, and then hopefully do the unveiling in February. Next slide gives you an overview of where we are on the covered bike shelter. This also has been, as noted on the site plan, it has gone through several reviews, and I'll talk to those in a moment, but just wanted to highlight that the model is the Ridgeville metal with a bronze roof. It's most similar to the bus shelters throughout the city. Bottom left, you can see what a large version would be. The one that'll be in front of City Hall is only 8 loops, which will hold 14 bikes. The center photo shows the flagpoles in the general area where this bike shelter is proposed to go, and then you have graphics for the permit plans that are going in, and the top right photo is a look of the actual shelter size and shape next to the flagpoles to give you some scale. For the next slide, I will note that this is part of the site plan, but also wanted to flag that was part of the transportation demand management plan that was approved as part of City Hall to reduce the overall parking, which was a waiver that was granted. And so the encouraging biking, besides all the other reasons to do it, are part of our required TDM plan. The AAB Architectural Advisory Board did review and approve the recommended design in February 21. The Ridgefield was the recommended design, and also they recommended relocating it from the initial site because it was taking away parking, which is limited on City Hall campus and would impact farmer market vendors. So that information plus continued staff work looking at the location resulted in the current plan in front of City Hall because it's within the 50-foot required distance per the zoning. It retains parking. It also resolves some stormwater issues that we would have with putting this permanent structure into the parking lot due to where the stormwater inlets are. Court security, it's perpendicular to City Hall, so you can see through. My superimposed on the photo doesn't show you the see-through, so it kind of looks solid, but you would be seeing under the roof with just the pillars and the loops, and then it doesn't have an impact on the farmer's market. Currently, the permit plans are under staff review. This will only need a building permit because it's under 2,500 square feet of disturbance. The shelter has been ordered and delivered, and so now we're in the final permitting review and then scheduling for installation, which staff hopes will be in February. So with that, I am glad to answer any questions. We do have online Carrie Odanino, who's been the project manager on the bus shelter, and Mary Catherine is still in the room, who's been my collaborator on the love sculpture.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity. We've been talking about both of these for a while, so it's good to see the visuals of them. We probably have questions and comments from up here. Anybody want to start? Looks like Ms. Connolly does online.
Thanks, Mayor Hardy. Thank you, Ms. Mester, for all of this. It is good to have a recap because it has been a long time since we looked at all of these things. I have a couple questions about the plaza. Can you go back to that slide? Well, go back to it, and then my question is, you said it's part of the approved site plan, and again, it's been a long time. I thought that we decided we were not doing that, and I guess all we decided several years ago is that we were not funding it because of a funding shortfall. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was two pieces. One, you elected not to fund it when we were allocating the ARPA and funding the proposed 4 parklets. You did the 3. Prior to that, you did have a work session where you talked about generally what the concept was, and there was a desire to have it more soft, flexible, maybe adaptable. We haven't done any redesign work pending funding, and so I just used the existing graphics that we had.
Okay, so if we wanted to change the approved site plan, how would we go about doing that?
If you could go slide 3 for me, Sophie. The site plan does not indicate the design, it just indicates the location of Park in Little Falls, so it's still up to council to approve the design and the funding.
Okay, and when do you envision that happening? Is that something that is imminent or far in the future?
The footnote, which I realize is hard to see, even though I tried to enlarge it, it says it would be installed as a separate project, and the intent was always that it would feed through your CIP project program. And so as we start the next development process, we could look at that workload, resources, and money.
Okay. As far as the love statue goes, I'm very excited that the city will have a permanent love statue because that's always a big hit when it's here in the summertime. I'm wondering about in putting it in that location. I think we had a conversation about possibly moving it around, and I think you said that is very cumbersome. I'm wondering how it sits and if it is put into that location where it is, and then we decide to do something different with the plaza. Is it movable or is it there forever?
It is movable. Each letter is individual and will be staked into the ground so it could be moved. They are heavy, so they are not going to move every year to go to watch night. Those I would recommend we still rent from the state, but it is movable to accommodate plaza construction.
Okay. And suppose we wanted to put it someplace else not at City Hall. I mean, there's a lot of we's involved in that. But was there any thought of putting it anywhere other than City Hall? And you mentioned like the safety and people climbing on it.
Yeah, I did work with Rexham Park, for example, looking at a lot of the parks and the playground, and some of that is the safety issues. We looked like in front of City Community Center with those space, and then ended up wanting since it was part of the 75th, really celebrating the center of democracy, good governance, having it as a gathering place where you have all your events and farmers market. And so we ended up gravitating to the place where the city has a lot of land and would be a great photo op opportunity.
Okay. And then as far as the tree canopy, as we think, I just want to put in a plug that as we think about doing something for a plaza or revisiting a plaza, we're really aware of what the tree canopy is there as well as the grass, because this love statue, it's not going to be on the sidewalk, right? So people are going to have to walk through the grass, which is fine. Grass is for walking, but is that right?
Yes, it would be in the grassy area near the, where the current oak leaf hydrangeas are planted, somewhere in there by the hemlocks. As we work with redoing that whole sidewalk piece as part of the Great Streets and then the future of the plaza, we would adjust it and enhance accessibility and protection of the ground and dirt, which is in desperate need of attention now anyway because of erosion, as we know.
Right. So, okay. So that is part of our thinking. We're aware that because it just seems like, is the front entrance of City Hall part of any master park plan? And as we do it, as we're adding a love statue and possibly a plaza and different trees and things, is there a master plan to how that should really look?
Not for the City Hall campus because it hasn't been part of the park master plan. So what we have is the site plan and where it needs to be designated, and then we'll work through the design process because I am quite sure it will disturb more than 2,500 square feet. So we will be at minimum doing site plan and grading plans. And so then
it seems like, go ahead, sorry.
There'll need to be a lot more community and council work on the plaza for sure. This is just to give you context, but we would be placing the love sculpture in that general area right now.
Okay. And then one last question, and I'll give up my microphone. The bike shelter, that is not going to take any parking spaces. It's going to be in the park, in the grassy area.
That is
Or
correct.
it is going to take.
It'll be sort of behind and perpendicular to the flags poles. That would be slide 7. Well, that one works good. You can see the existing flag poles, and it'll go to the left behind the boxwoods and the parking.
And are those added park benches that will also be added for that area?
That's a future concept design pending funding.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Ms. Underhill?
Where are we in the process for both the bike rack and the love sculpture? I guess what I'm wondering tonight is, like, if we say, hey, we want to change this or move this or whatever else, do we still have the potential to do this, or are you mostly just informing us of this is what's happening?
Let me speak to the love sculpture and then ask Ms. Odenino to speak to the bike shelter. For the love sculpture, we're at the point where the employees have submitted their designs and we've confirmed criteria and we're ready to move it through the design process of the affordable housing. I keep doing AH, Arts and Humanities Council, not Affordable Housing tonight. Arts and Humanities Council, Planning Commission, then Council. Parallel to that, we're working on getting the quotes so we can fabricate the metal and do the wraps. But that's where the love sculpture is in terms of producing it. So definitely my goal is to inform you of that process. We can tweak where we're going to put it for sure, but staff's recommendation is the plaza because it's part of the site plan. It separates you from keeps the grassy area open and separates you from the farmer's market activity, gives you some space. For the bike shelter, Carrie, do you want to comment on where we are on the process for permitting and so forth?
Yes. So we are about 2 to 3 weeks from completing the permitting process, and then it would take 2 or 3 weeks to get on site and 5 weeks to complete the work. This staff has looked at a lot of locations on the City Hall campus, and it would add several months to change the location at this point.
Okay.
And I would note that this was the best location after all the review because of stormwater, parking, grade, and so forth, and court security, and the zoning requirement that you have to be 50 feet within 50 feet of the public entrance, which is the west wing.
Okay, thank you. I guess my main comment on the love sculpture is that I do worry about, I love the love sculptures, whether I'm going to Tyson's or Merrifield or whatever else. I think they're really great, and especially for attracting people to take photos and whatever else. I worry about visual clutter, and so I do wonder, I would like to consider other locations besides right that corner at City Hall. And that would be my main comment.
Other comments, Ms. Flynn?
Thank you. I know this came up somewhat at Budget and Finance when we were talking about the Love Sculpture and the bike shelter project, so thank you for the update and kind of making this more concrete in terms of where, not making literally the park more concrete, but making this more concrete to us in terms of, visualizing what was going on. I said before, I do have concerns about loss of green space, loss of park space. I think when we look at the community survey, it's something that our residents prioritize. I understand the constraints with the covered bike shelter. I still would be in favor of seeing whether there are alternate locations or there's the possibility of splitting the 14 loops between 2 locations so that you might have something, closer to an employee entrance and then something smaller that's not taking up 24 feet, going perpendicular from the parking into the park space because it's large. I mean, it's pretty large. And so if you could continue to look at that, I would be in favor of doing so. In terms of the plaza, I guess looking at the site plan, the language that you had emphasized there, I didn't read, that language as necessarily requiring a plaza as part of the site plan where it says to be installed in a separate project effort. So I do wonder the extent to which we're beholden to actually having a plaza there, and I would be in favor of revisiting that for the same reasons of, not wanting to lose green space in the city, just to kind of, pave over some of this. And, I want to be careful too. I think we're talking about public space and public funds, and just because it's the City Hall campus and it's not technically park space, that, we're not taking kind of liberties with green space in a way that is sort of in conflict with sort of how our residents think about our priorities for using land and open space that we currently have control over. So I agree with the comments thus far. If we're going to do the love sculpture, to me, it doesn't totally kind of dovetail with 75th anniversary. It seems like we're putting a state, marketing tourism logo on city property, and that we're essentially, putting state brands on city government, which may work sometimes and doesn't work as well other times, depending on whether city and local and state policy are aligned or if they're not aligned. So I would be in favor of possibly having this sculpture somewhere else. I know that the schools expressed an interest in having it. It might be that some of our parklets are a good space for it. I agree that, it brings Instagram sort of opportunities, but don't necessarily want to create foot traffic on grass that we're already trying to preserve with the extension of sort of the farmer's market on that leg. So I think there's a little bit more work to do on this one, and maybe to hear some more options before I would support putting it there for many of the same reasons Ms. Connolly and Ms. Underhill stated.
For setting expectations, the bus shelter has already been delivered, And so it is one, that said, a site plan can be amended, we would just need to go through that process. So I just wanted to set those two expectations, and appreciate the feedback, because right now that corner is actually not very engaging and interactive, because you got the sign in the garden, you got a little bit of grass to the sidewalk. So the future idea for the plaza was to be more engaging with the public.
Other
It
comments?
doesn't have to be hardscape.
Okay, I have some thoughts. What's the timeline for Great Streets again?
Do you remember off the?
Our CIP team just left.
Are we like a year away? Was it 2026, 2027?
27, 28.
Yeah, we just started the right-of-way phase.
Like 2 years away.
Yep.
So I do share some of the concerns. I think I'd be the fourth person to speak up on this. So what I do like, I like the employee participation. I like commemorating the 75th anniversary. I remember when we did not fund the plaza a couple years ago or more years ago, I think even with the City Hall project back in 2018, we had reservations about using that green space the way it was. And so I would actually recommend that we revisit the site plan and not let that dictate what we do with that corner. So let's get consensus on what the right corner is, especially in light of Great Streets coming in 2 years, and what the right interplay between those projects might look like. I would agree with the comments about the Love sculpture. Given that we've had employees participate and submit designs, I love the idea of actually putting it in our pocket parks, especially the one on South Washington that might need more visual interest and might need more budget. I think we talked about that one. Or rotating it if we can find a way to move it around every year or so and bring more attention to various parks. But I don't want the driver of what goes in that corner to be a site plan that we frankly may not have had actually consensus on, given that council didn't fund it. So that would be my main request. I'm fine with the bike shelter. I think that's been long overdue. And so I look forward to that proceeding. I would just ask that we think about ADA accessibility, because I know currently it's behind the flagpoles, and I think there's a curb that goes over it. And so I don't know if all that will get reworked as part of installing the new bike shelter to make sure that
That will be redone. Slide 7, Sophie, if you don't mind, but there will be new access coming in to that area that'll be ramped up to the flags, and then that area will be ADA accessible over to the base of the bike shelter.
Great. Thank you. Any final comments on this one? Thanks again for the opportunity to update us and chime in.
Thank you, Council.
I know that we have lots of members of the audience who are patiently waiting for an agenda item later on in a packet, and so we actually would probably propose an amendment to the agenda just so that we can take this item up and let you all get on with your evening. So
I would move to.
I would move to change the agenda to move up item
TR 24-38.
TR 24-38 to the next agenda item.
Second.
Mrs. Scott on the second. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz-Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience, and thank you for staff's flexibility in moving this item up. Come on up, Ms. Baseborn.
So the item is TR 24-38, resolution designating the honorary name of Saigon Boulevard to Wilson Boulevard to within the city of Falls Church.
Good evening, City Council. Tonight, City Council is requested to take action on a resolution that reaffirms its 2005 honorary designation of the city's portion of Wilson Boulevard to Saigon Boulevard. This project is a follow-up to the East End Small Area Plan. This distinction honors the Vietnamese people, history, and culture that has shaped the East End of the city of Falls Church since the 1970s. This action would reaffirm and continue the city's 2005 resolution that requested that the Virginia Department of Transportation, VDOT, give Wilson Boulevard the ceremonial name of Saigon Boulevard. Council is requested to adopt this resolution that confirms this honorary designation and includes the following legal provisions. The honorary designation of the name Saigon Boulevard to the 6700 block, or to 66 to 6700 blocks of Wilson Boulevard is honorary only and does not replace the official name of Wilson Boulevard. The honorary designation would have no effect on the address of any property within the designated street blocks. The effect of this designation is to authorize placement of commemorative signs, and new additional signage will have different sign color, design, and location atop existing street signage to avoid creating confusion for traveling public. And finally, this designation will expire after 10 years and then can be renewed by council following an adopted policy for honorary namings. As a follow-up to this naming effort, staff recommends that the City Council adopt a policy for the honorary naming of streets, roads, and alleys for future new projects. Recommendation. Staff recommends adoption of TR 24-38. Updates throughout the staff report can be found in gray. I just want to briefly touch on a couple of those. So beginning on lines 31, we have a comments matrix that gets into the council discussion during their work session on November 4th. Just to briefly preview some of the discussion, there was a question about old signage being removed. There was a question about Fairfax putting signage on their side of Wilson Boulevard. There was also a question about getting maybe an additional sign closer to the BJ's Wholesale. And there was support for new signage being more visible than the existing, and also support for new signage accompanying Wilson Boulevard signage to recognize and elevate the honorary name. Moving on to line 38 of the staff report to briefly touch on background. So briefly on the Vietnamese history in Falls Church. During the fall of Saigon, South Vietnamese immigrants fled Vietnam and immigrated to the United States. Many Vietnamese immigrants settled in Arlington County, creating what was once known as Little Saigon. Following metro construction, many small Vietnamese businesses relocated to the nearby Plaza Shopping Center in Falls Church. Over time, the Plaza Center became Eden Center, named after a popular shopping center or shopping district in Saigon, Vietnam. Now I want to hop over to page 6 of the staff report. And under legal requirements, we do have that change of the designation expiring after 10 years, a 10-year sunset, and it can then be renewed by City Council. And the thought was to follow the adopted policy for honorary namings. On sign location, I do want to highlight that we have included the potential for a sign on the portion of Wilson Boulevard east of Roosevelt Boulevard as well, close to BJ's and the shopping center that was noted during the work session. Now I want to hop over to page 8 of the staff report to look at the design concepts. So of course, just looking at line 133, the following example is an example of proposed signage that will be finalized in coordination with the community. So the signage conforms to MUTCD standards or requirements, engineering requirements, and ADA requirements. And what we're highlighting here is the logo that is representative of the clock tower at Eden Center. And you can see that the colors red and yellow are also reflected on the logo. And the sign is both in English and Vietnamese. I also want to go over to page 9 really quick to highlight the new section on legal authority. So there are various just different legal documents that are highlighted here. So we have about 6, including the previous resolution that was adopted by council back in 2005. We also have our city code, we have the East End Small Area Plan, and we also have the Virginia State Code, all highlighted in one section under legal authority, which is new in the staff report. For timing, tonight we're here for city council action following our work session on November 4th last week. And then for sign fabrication, we're looking at early winter 2025. And then hopefully we'll have our signage unveiling event in either January or February of 2025. Thank you all. Looking forward to your comments.
Great. Thank you for those updates and being responsive to our discussion from the work session. Do we have any comments up here? Ms. Underhill?
Just wanted to say thank you for putting this together, and I also agree that the clock tower with the yellow background is probably the way to go. I I just also wanted to thank the Vietnamese community for staying through all of the other sessions and staying so late and coming here to support and to speak up about this. This has been my first year on council, and it's been amazing working with all of you, from the New Year's celebration at Eden Center to the performances outside of City Hall to Vietnamese Heritage Day, and working with VLAC on the Arts and Humanities Council in LAFA. And it's been really wonderful how you all have welcomed us into your community as well. So thank you for honoring Vietnamese heritage and cultural history within the city. And thank you for your advocacy, your continued advocacy and partnership here. So I really appreciate everything you've had to say today. And I look forward to a long time of seeing you guys back at City Council and celebrating this sign unveiling too. Thank you.
Great. Other comments? Ms. Flynn?
I'll go quickly just to echo Ms. Underhill's remarks. I mean, I met a lot of, at least a few of the people, I guess, here tonight during the East End Small Area Plan listening session before the Planning Commission, before I was on council, and, you know, felt so inspired and really thinking about, you know, how the city can do outreach and really facilitate more public participation and ensuring that people who are part of this community feel like that their feedback is meaningful and that it matters and that they can sort of affect city policy. And so it's been, you know, really just heartwarming to see not only, you know, how many more people are participating here in city government and making the time to come, but that your own community, you know, has grown and that sort of a newer generation of advocates has sort of been born out of this process. And when we see, you know, folks tuning in from Maryland or tuning in from other areas of Virginia and sort of reiterating and reaffirming the purpose and the central sort of importance of Eden Center and this community in their lives, I think that it really is something that we all, you know, feel very grateful to have you as part of our community, continuing to advocate for yourselves and to advocate for that much stronger partnership with all of us. So thank you again.
Great. Ms. Downs.
Thank you, Mayor Hardy. Thank you, Ms. Flynn. Hi, I'm Laura. I am brand new to the council, so I didn't get to work with any of you through this project, but I did follow it through the news press and the different council sessions. And I just wanted to say I'm thrilled to be part of this project this evening because, you know, you all, I really feel that the Eden Center is really a crown jewel for Falls Church City, and I'm so proud that the Eden Center is part of our community. I love reading about the different restaurants, and, you know, the Eden Center gets quite a bit of coverage in the Washington Post and Washingtonian Magazine, and it makes me so proud that you're part of, that the Eden Center is part of the Falls Church City community. And I wanted to just ask, thank you so much for the presentation this evening. I know one of our public speakers this evening asked specifically about the 10-year sunset, and so just to clarify, that's a legal reason, there's a legal reason for that?
Yeah, so we included it under the new legal provisions in the resolution. Essentially, the honorary naming would come back in 10 years and follow what would be adopted policy guidance for honorary naming. So right now, we don't have an official policy, adopted policy, and we would hope to carry this through so that it would be in line with whatever policy we eventually have on the books. Also, the 10-year mark follows the lifespan of a sign. So if new signage needed to be installed with the renewal, you could also get new signage. The city attorney was reviewing the Denver requirements for honorary renamings or honorary namings, and that was in there as well, that particular stipulation around 10 years. So I think it is appropriate, especially with new signage maybe needing to come in a couple years down the road, and the renewal could happen hand in hand with that.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. So then you have an automatic time where you can relook at that, and maybe we'll have even bigger and better signs in 10 years. But thank you for that clarification.
Vice Mayor.
I think it's so much of what I was hoping to say was much better said by my colleagues, but I just want to echo my thanks for you all being here this evening, for continuing to advocate on behalf of the community, and for allowing us to be part of your community. I think it was much better said by my colleagues, so I'm ready to, well, I would like to hear everybody else, but then I'm ready to move to adopt.
Mr. Snyder?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Madam Mayor. I think I've supported the Vietnamese community there for pretty much the entire time that I've been on City Council, so it's a pleasure to carry this forward. And I very much appreciate your attendance and everything that you do for the benefit of our community. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm going to wrap up the way I think I started when we adopted the East End Area Plan. I think at the time I said that policies and plans are only as good as the actions. And so here is the first of hopefully many more actions to come that we had outlined as commitments to the community. So thank you to the BPC for amplifying the voices of the community and bringing a bridge to that community for local government. And most importantly, I think holding us accountable to actions. I think during the East End process, we talked about this being the first. I look forward to hopefully having you all at the table to work on other things, whether it's placemaking, alternative parking arrangements, public art, helping with lease negotiations and tenants' rights. I think there's more to do in that community, and we look forward to your partnership on that. So thank you. Do we have a motion for this item?
Move to adopt TR 24-38.
Second.
Ms. Flynn on the second. Can you call roll, please?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz-Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, council.
Congratulations. Would you all like to come up for a photo to commemorate this?
Yeah, they deserve a photo.
Emily, do we have anything, a mock-up of the sign that's in paper? It's in the staff report, yeah. That's true.
We'll have the.
Sophie can take a picture for you so you can be in.
I'll wait so long, we gotta move. Move it up.
I know. You sure you don't want to stay?
Nice to meet you in person, not just virtual. Yeah, so I'll follow up for a meeting and for the best and the outreach program. Good to see you.
Thank you all for sticking with us 2 hours into the agenda. But we're not quite done of the report of the city manager. So thank you to staff for.
So next up is a report on the council strategic priorities, and deputy city managers will be providing that report, and we'll start Andy and Jenny Carroll. Andy Young and Jenny Carroll, I don't know who's going to go first. Andy Young is going to go first.
I'll lead off.
Andy's going to lead.
Thanks, council, for the opportunity to come provide a brief update on the many council priority initiatives that we have going on. So I think, so Jenny and I are going to hit on the highlights here after completion of the first quarter. We provided an update and had a discussion with council in July on these initiatives. And so we want to hit on some highlights. I'll cover a few accomplishments. Jenny's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that are upcoming next. And then we're happy to dive into any specific initiative you have comments or questions on for us. So from a key accomplishments perspective, so On number 2, implementing the Community Energy Action Plan. So we expanded the one-stop content for residents and businesses on the city's website. So if you all haven't had a chance to check out some of the great work that Kurt Lawrence is doing for us, encourage you to do so. So number 5, developing options to pay for solid waste services that incentivize waste reduction and promote equity. So we had a lengthy work session with council on October 7th, and staff will be coming back to propose adding a third bin for organic waste as part of the FY26 budget. On number 7, completing the bicycle master plan. So we're hopefully largely at the end of this process. So we've initiated a comp plan amendment to be voted on in February. Number 14, completing and maintaining city features that help deliver an attractive sense of place. We talked about it earlier. We've completed a couple of the parklets. And then number 16 is complete. So we've provide parking requirement relief for existing commercial buildings that was adopted by council on October 28th, and we'll be coming back in October of next year for an update. Jenny?
Thank you, council. So either I can see my paper or I can see you with my glasses. So looking at what's coming up next for the council initiatives, under the first initiative, the geothermal HVAC project will go into construction at the community center in January of 2025. This also includes a relocation of the Rec and Park offices along with adjusting programming to serve the community as well. So they will continue with programming during the time that the construction project is happening. Under number 8, which was the ADA transition plan, the public outreach will begin with this month and go through January of 2025. For number 14, the scope of the Tinner Hill Alley Parklet options will go to the Economic Development Authority on December 3rd. And then for number 15, which has to do with the Gordon Road Triangle, the ULI Technical Assistance Panel will start in early 2025, and Wyatt gave those dates earlier this evening in his report. Or when his report started, rather. Number 19, the affordable living policy, the first draft of that policy will come to council in January of 2025. And then finally, number 26, reviewing and updating the city financial policies. That will start this month. The council review is scheduled. That includes a work session and adoption of a resolution. And with that, we will open it for questions or comments.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments on the council priorities? Mr. Snyder?
Thanks a lot, Madam Mayor. There was one priority going back to the session we had, I think it was in the library, about governance. Is that in the list?
Yes, so good governance was one of the areas, and the ones that were under that were starting with number 21, and that was refreshing and updating the website, and then updating the utilities and facilities chapter of the comp plan, developing a citywide customer service program, and a couple more. Was there one in particular that you were interested in?
Related to conflict of interest was another.
The conflict of interest.
I think there's some group working on that, but I didn't see.
Yeah, there is, and that was Initiative 26, if I recall correctly. And we do have a team that's working on that, and some of the updates that we have, I think the big element of this initiative is we will have the state Conflicts of Interest Board come to the City of Falls Church for a training session for staff, for elected officials, and for board and commission members. I think it's going to be a really important training for all of us. And in the meantime, we do now have an aspect of the staff reports where there is a discussion of conflicts of interest on any matter that comes before the, or most matters that come before the city council.
Okay, thanks very much.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Nguyen?
Oh, I had a few, but I don't want to go kind of totally down into the weeds. Picking up on the good governance aspect, and maybe it's just the wording here. When we did the council priorities, this kind of focuses on kind of compensation and more equity, issues. I'm looking at number 24, develop changes to the compensation system that foster workplace development and provide employee growth and opportunities. And I guess in my mind, that was one aspect of sort of the good governance and employee, culture and fostering a supportive, inclusive, work environment that encourages, growth. And I guess the other aspect was kind of where we are on just assessing, employee satisfaction, assessing kind of where people are with the health of the organization. And we had started taking some of that up in GovOps. It had kind of fallen off at different points in time. And so I just want to make sure that that doesn't get lost overall as a council priority when we start to kind of break down some of these items into different buckets, that like that overarching wanting to really have strong organizational culture that's responsive to kind of data we're seeing, and that allows for organizational change kind of over time, isn't like lost in this document. So I don't know if you wanted to speak at all to kind of where that stood, or if maybe it makes sense to have an update at the November GovOps meeting, if that's a better place for it.
It's actually planned for the November GovOps meeting. So we'll be giving an update on the Employee Survey Action Plan work group, the work that they've finished. In addition to that, in terms of, I think, assessing employees that you mentioned, we contract with Probalski Services, and so every other year we either do the community survey or an employee survey, and so 2025 will be the community survey again, 2026 will be the employee survey.
Great. Then sort of jumping around a little bit, because we were talking about crosswalks in the CIP project, I did have some questions about number 8 on completing the ADA transition plan. I know that when we had talked about this initially, my hope was that we would be able to use these in-field accessibility evaluations to also help with some diagnosis of like maybe problem intersections and where we could improve, not only in terms of ADA accessibility, but just like pedestrian safety and multimodal, like overall. So I was just interested in whether there's sort of preliminary feedback at all, or whether we'll be able to kind of see some of what the in-field accessibility evaluations showed, and whether or not DPW is going to be able to like even more quickly implement some of that feedback, potentially even in advance of an ADA transition plan.
So I don't know about in advance of the plan. We're trying to get the plan done kind of in the first part of 2025. So a lot of the initial field work of accessibility, particularly of the pedestrian infrastructure in the city, has been completed. We don't expect to have more to share on that until after the first of the year.
Okay. Because I know, because we've talked about even certain intersections, that we encounter around here more regularly, or the crash issues at even North Maple and Great Falls, and you get to an intersection like that, and even though there are sidewalks and crosswalk, ADA ramps, you're stranded without actual crosswalk striping. So I didn't know if this was gonna kind of account for some of those issues beyond the actual like architectural improvements that this company may highlight for us.
So I believe, we'll catch some of that. Now, whether it gets into kind of all the safety aspects of intersections that aren't accessibility driven, I'm not sure on that. We'd have to get back to you.
Okay. On the, number 4, tree canopy, since it says it's coming up or we're in the midst of the draft legislation, as the liaison to Urban Forestry Commission, is there anything that, more than what UFC initially submitted, that it would be helpful to have from that commission in terms of further input as staff takes that on more directly?
So our urban forest, so we've had an initial discussion with staff. We have a scoping discussion with planning and, our urban forester in early December. And I think after that meeting, we'll have a better indication of kind of how things will come together in early 2025.
Okay, because I think that, that commission in particular has been looking for sort of tangible outputs, deliverables,
Understood.
right?
Yep.
And so I think that to the extent that, because the urban forestry crew is so small, that it would be helpful to have the commission, help in any way, that there are individuals who would be, interested in doing that, or the commission potentially taking that on, if it helps staff and sort of with the lift of getting this, or if there's other, localities, ordinances in Virginia that, you would want help pulling or comparing or whatever else. I think urban forestry would be interested in helping in that if it helped move this along.
Okay, that's good feedback. We'll talk about that.
And I think that's most of what I have. I'll defer to colleagues since I know we're not kind of going through item by item.
Yes, I just have 2 clarification questions on the number 1, the Government Operations Energy Action Plan. There is a key action that is for Q2, that's making, develop, Q2 2025, developing the decision-making template for fleet purchases. And then, but Q1, we're completing a fleet grant purchase. Are those, this was a grant that was already decided upon, and then we're working on the fleet?
So we received a grant in, I think, early 2023 for the purchase of green fleet vehicles for the Department of Public Works, to include some electric vehicle charging station installations. And so we've had a couple challenges on that, one being, with the federal source of money, it requires some quirky contracting things for us to do. I think we found a solution for how to purchase the vehicles that meet those requirements, but the vehicles we're intending to purchase aren't available at the moment on that contract. So we're anticipating that that'll happen in the first part of 2025, but I don't have a specific date on it yet. We can't use our normal source of vehicle for our normal sources for vehicle purchases because of the grant. So that's what that alludes to. So we're a little behind on that one as a result.
But there's already been a tremendous amount of work done on the decision-making, the template for making the decisions of purchases going forward. Like this says Q2 2025, but haven't you done the fleet review and projections on what
so I think
the replacement and what could be replaced with electric, hybrid, et cetera?
Right. So I think this is intended to kind of have a standard kind of decision-making criteria that we would walk through for each. I think as we've kind of come to council over the last year, there's been questions about why we're purchasing certain vehicles. And so I think this is intended to be a template we would fill out to help articulate the decision-making process for each of those vehicle purchases. This is a coordination thing that we haven't finished internally, and I would expect it would be in the first quarter of 25 before we would get that done.
Okay, and then that leads to the last request or question is that when we get to this template, making this decision, that we're also doing this in conjunction with the schools. We've had the discussions about the buses most recently, and I just want to make sure we're moving forward because so much of our government operations is within our school operations. I want to make sure that the school staff and school board are in lockstep with us in achieving our energy action plan goals. And I think you mentioned that in the Q4 of 2025 city and school facility operations. So I just want to make sure as we move towards our discussions with the school board in December that we're clear on how we can move forward together to do that and how it impacts budget decisions for the next fiscal year. I think that's it for me right now. Thanks.
Understood. Thank you.
Ms. Underhill?
Just 4 quick things, but first, just thank you for putting this together. It's really helpful to see all the different items that are currently in play right now. For number 23, which is develop a citywide customer service program, I guess I just was wondering, like, when I think about this, I think about the people that come to us and say, like, hey, what's going on with the traffic light that's still broken, or what's going on with, something that I've asked for 5 times in the past few years. And so is this being coordinated alongside with the website? Because I see this going hand in hand with, or this customer service program going hand in hand with people being able to track things on the website.
So I think that would be a natural partnership.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I wasn't sure how that lined up together, but I'm glad to hear that. Other things, just a quick thing on number 11. I just want to make sure, I know that it was an example to amend the city ordinance with respect to shared mobility. I just want to make sure that car share is included with scooters and e-bikes, and that isn't forgotten. On number 9, could you talk through just briefly so with Vision Zero, the steps are going to be come up with a checklist and then come up with crash data and then figure out how to implement that with safety improvements? Is that something that would be ongoing? Or if you could give me an overview of what the plan is with Vision Zero, and what the ongoing items would be.
So one of the things we have started is, we all get, from the kind of various folks kind of involved with transportation now get a weekly report on traffic accidents in the city over the last week. And so trying to increase visibility of that information with staff is something we've started. I think what we'd like to do kind of in the third quarter, I keep flip-flopping on fiscal versus calendar year, but I think in the first 3 months of 2025, what we'd like to come to council is give a presentation on that data and talk through how staff is setting up processes to use that data to help inform projects and things that we do in the city going forward.
Great.
So that's, I think, one of the key things that we're proposing to do related to this initiative. And the other is to kind of lay out a checklist that we would use on future projects that outline key elements of what a Complete Streets or a Vision Zero program would target to include, so that staff, is prompted to kind of evaluate and consider all of those things on each of our projects going forward. So we've had a bunch of discussion on how to action this item that we've talked to you all about, and those are the 2 things I think that we've gotten our arms around that we think are worth doing.
Great. And so that sort of checklist would that go to a board and commission? Would that go through CACT too? Is that something that they would get their hands on, or is that more an internal thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And then I guess the main thing that I care about out of this is that we are making decisions based on data, so that we are getting that data, it's compiled in some way, and then we're prioritizing what we're doing based on that data. And so making sure it's not just a one-time thing, but a regular occurrence, that we're somehow able to process data and continue that forward. And then the final thing that I was wondering about, I know we've kind of been talking about missing link list and sidewalk priority list. Is that something that's nested in here somewhere? I just didn't see, I don't know where that belongs, and I just didn't see it in here.
That is something that we're working, and I think, we have an annual process that we're intending to kind of implement going forward, and it's not included in the council initiatives. But like a lot of other things that we're doing in the city that, aren't necessarily kind of captured in the council initiatives, but it's still work that the city staff is doing.
Right, okay. Okay, then that answers that. I guess, I almost wonder if it should be nestled in under here. You're doing the work anyway, but I appreciate that, so thank you so much.
Yep.
Ms. Downs?
Yes, thank you. Thank you all so much for the presentation, and thanks to my new colleagues. I think these are terrific priorities. It's really interesting coming off the campaign trail and reading these, so many of these were communicated to me during the campaign and while I was knocking on doors. So I thought it was really great to see it right in front of me. I have just a couple of comments, no questions or anything, but for number 9, again, going back to the complete streets, that bottom key action, advocate for increased local authority for photo, speed enforcement, red light enforcement, stronger requirements to yield to pedestrians. I think this is really key. One of the things that the school system did, as y'all may know or remember, is we put the cameras on the school buses. And what was really interesting about that was that it brought in revenue, unfortunately, because people would run those stop signs when the buses had it. But what was also interesting was they were able to track, and there was a very low reoccurrence. So if someone received a ticket from running a stop sign when the bus was stopped, very rarely did they do it again. So I do think that, and I know that we've been talking about we've had community members come in specifically about that Gundry and Annandale intersection, and I think a child or two might have almost been hit or have been hit. So that is something that, could we think, down the line, but could you think about putting up, a light there with an actual red light camera? And would that finally slow people down and prevent them from running those red lights and potentially hitting our little kids who live in that neighborhood? And I know when I door knocked on Broad and, cars, because I think of when 66 was changed with the fast lanes, I think now what's happened is more and more people are coming Route 50, then using Broad as a way to get to Tyson's instead of using 66. And so a lot of times when I was door knocking, the cars are just flying down. And I know Mayor Hardy had said, maybe could it be looking at a speed camera by Doolin, because that's a preschool, it's not a public school. But so I just think, I just wanted to echo this. I think this last bottom key action for number 9 is really important. And that was the number one theme I heard during the campaign, was exactly this, like speeding, running red lights, pedestrian safety, all that. And so then, so that was just my 2 cents on that. For number 12, also, this was something also I heard about the permit process, people being frustrated. So I think anything we can do to help with that process, and, whether that's, and don't want to speak for my colleagues, but, if it's something about needing to invest some money into that process to make it better. But I did hear, I think that would be the one thing I heard in terms of frustrations with city services would be that. And then number 23, to piggyback on Ms. Underhill's comments, I think I'm really excited about looking at really the customer service program, but I hope Mr. Shields, you will let us know too. Sometimes I think when offices don't have enough staff, it can come across also as poor customer service. So I would just ask you that when you start to explore this customer service, and if it's really, and I know Mayor Hardy has told me, as I've researched for my campaign, that there's been a 20% increase in staff over the past couple of years. So I know that this council has done that. But if you do see there are things that maybe if it's an extra person here or there could help improve the customer service situation for our residents, I hope you would let us know that. Thank you.
Great. I will have some general comments and some specific ones. So first of all, I'm glad, Andy, you said it first, that you were mixing up calendar year versus fiscal year. I found myself, when I was reading all 30 pages of this, having to do that in my head. I don't know if anyone else would have the same issue. Yes, so this is the first time that we've looked at an update since we adopted the priorities. So the new format, I think we're still adjusting to, but I did think that, like, many of us were having to toggle in our brains, like, oh, what year are we now? And this is Q2. We're right now in Q2 of FY25 versus calendar year Q4, I guess.
Does anybody have a vote on which way we should go?
Does it get confusing for staff if we went with the normal? Because
Like the normal calendar?
I process things in the I have to convert it each time. And so I was actually confused as to what quarter we were in now.
So I think the normal for staff is fiscal year. So your normal is not our normal, but
You
we
could
do it either
potentially-
way.
Oh, sorry. You could potentially in like a footer, it might help. I mean, it's not like that when you had the Gantt charts or whatever they were, but if you just have a footer and the footer actually has the quarters, labeled in terms of the fiscal year, I think that could just help overall where you don't have to do it per page, but so long as it's there as a like reference on each page, it would help me at least.
That was going to be my other suggestion. Believe it or not, this was a lot more detailed than I was expecting, and then I potentially want. I know that it's probably 30 pages requires lots more work from staff. I kind of liked the format where we had the Gantt chart to know where projects were, and at a glance you could be like, okay, this one hasn't started, so I'm just going to ignore this one, versus having to read through this. I'm like, oh, is this one started or is this one coming up? So I would just encourage you all to think about what's efficient for you all to report on updates as well as produce this, and not overdo it just for our sake. Because we'll certainly dig into details and ask about them, but I want to make sure that we are sensitive in how much work we're asking you to produce this on a quarterly basis. So that's kind of the first general comment is calendar year, fiscal year, as well as kind of the format, and make sure it's reasonable to do this. A couple specific ones. Number 5 on the solid waste plan, appreciate the follow-up since we had the work session discussion on looking at a third bin. Given that our original objectives were to solve both equity as well as reduce waste, I don't think we've really solved the equity one. So while it's good that we'll get the idea around the third bin underway, given the public comment we received, I still consider that open for more discussion, I think, hopefully by council. Moving on to number 10, which is the sidewalk, new brick sidewalk standards. I think I've raised this before, but I think there was language in there about when projects are through design and bidding process, then you're going to keep the brick sidewalk and crosswalk standards. The Broad Street multimodal project I brought up several times, mainly because it's so expansive. I think when I pulled up the site plan, it talks about doing brick sidewalks all the way from West Street down to Virginia, which is half of the city. So is that a project that is through design and bidding already? Are we going to be able to catch it mid-flight to look at a new standard, or is that one passed?
So I think the standard is, have we gotten VDOT's approval to put a bid packet out? And that project is not at that standard yet. Okay. And so I think that one is open for a change. And so we're working through what that new design spec would be. The Quinn project was going to be our model for that we're going to kind of use the architecture that comes out of that project to develop the new standard. That's in process right now, so we'll have a briefing with the council on what that would look like. We were talking about that this afternoon when we schedule that. And so when we talk council schedule, we'll talk about dates when we have that conversation.
Looks like Q3, which I guess is January through March of 2025, is what's proposed. Is that in time to catch the Broad Street project then?
We'll take that note and loop back.
Okay.
I don't know.
Because it's been brought up several times. It's a big project, and I really worry about, number one, both the cost as well as the long-term maintenance for that. Moving on to, I don't forget which item this is, but the CEAP. I think this is about EV chargers. And so are the only publicly accessible chargers in City Hall and then Broad and Washington? Are there plans for other publicly accessible EV chargers?
Sponsored and installed by the city? No.
And we have no
Not
plans
currently.
for beyond the ones on city campus?
No.
Okay. That's a comment that I've received when visiting buildings, because a lot of our older mixed-use buildings don't have them inside the buildings, and so a lot of them will drive to City Hall and park them. I know there's some pretty cool technology out there where you can use street spaces, so not needing a whole charging station. I think I sent it along as maybe to the city manager mailbox, but would encourage us to think about that, because it doesn't take up a space necessarily. It can be used as a regular space, but then there's a cord that you can essentially plug in an EV. So something for us to think about.
Might be helpful input for you all to provide us as part of the CIP discussions this upcoming year, because that becomes a whole project for us to take on.
Also important, I think, for neighborhoods like Winter Hill, right? So they don't have a garage where they can plug in their EV. And so as we think about more townhome communities or older ones that don't have access to them, having more publicly accessible EV chargers, I think, is important to think about the different types of housing that we have.
And Mayor, also we have the ones at the high school, Right, so, I mean, I don't know if the public who don't have kids at the high school know those are even there.
Do we have a map?
So I think that schools, like, they're not, I don't think that they're publicly visible in the same way that the city hall ones are. I think that was a conscious decision on the behalf of the schools for that. So that might be why.
Yeah.
Part of the reason.
But they're not, yeah, I mean, I don't see, they're often unused, that when I've been up there for games and stuff. So I don't know, I'm just
think people know about
throwing that out there, yeah.
I think it'd be great to publish where they are, if there's not a map of them, and what's actually publicly available.
And our Smart Cities contact, there are at least a half a dozen different companies who will do non-fixed EV charging. So there are a lot of technologies that are out there. I'm sure Cindy and the Smart Cities team has a lot of access to that too, but it goes back to Andy's point of deciding what we were going to spend our money on, and whether you have the market drive that. You know, if you own a grocery store, you own other things, whether you want people to come there, you put in your own private versus using public dollars for EV. So I look forward to having that continued conversation.
I will echo Ms. Downs' point that I think between what she's heard on the campaign trail and what we hear from the community is that transportation safety continues to be the top priority. And so I think number 9, our focus on complete streets and visions there doesn't really quite capture all of it. Things that we've also talked about, sidewalks, which Mitch Underhill talked about, is, you know, wanting more investment in new sidewalks, missing links, working on accessibility of sidewalks, but also the increasing the throughput of the rapid response team. So we funded the team, and I think we saw a set of initial great projects out there. I know Public Works continues to be have staff issues with filling vacancies, but I think that's something that the community would continue to like to see more work and output from, and more faster projects, so that we don't have to continually ask, where are we with, you know, this neighborhood traffic calming request? And so whether that's a budget discussion that we should have again in FY26, or whether it's an interim discussion, I think that's an item that we're certainly hearing a lot of desire for.
Understood.
And then the last one, so 12 and 13, the 2 process items, one for payments as well as for permits. I would challenge us to think about getting some process engineering help. So anytime you're talking about improving processes, it's often hard if you're doing the process day to day to improve it. And sometimes you really need that fresh perspective of someone who can look at waste in a process. So I was formerly like Lean and Six Sigma certified. And so there's people who do this as a profession who will look at your process from beginning to end, understand where there's redundancy, where there's waste, where you can use technology. And so those 2 might be ripe for having some outside expertise, rather than have us try to fix something that we're, you know, just very used to ourselves. So.
But we've been having similar discussions in recent weeks along the same lines.
Great.
So, yep.
But overall, thank you for the update on this, and we look forward to more quarterly updates.
Thank you.
Great.
Madam Mayor, if I might, just to quickly address the electronic traffic law enforcement issue. Richmond really is hostile to, frankly, to electronic safety enforcement. And we made a strong effort last year, and it's going to be a key part of our legislative session. So I just wanted everyone to be aware that we're, I think, doing everything we're allowed to do, or in process of doing everything we're allowed to do. But we really have to put, and the public really needs to put pressure on Richmond to get more authority to do even more. So hopefully we can all work together to build that sort of public support. Thanks.
Mayor Hardy, if I may, Mr. Snyder, is that, is it more of a local control issue? Is that what it is? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any final comments? Okay. If not, I think we can get to business on the agenda. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Since we're past 10 o'clock, do people need a break before we get to hopefully quick items, or should we just power through?
Are we skipping council requests?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about those. No, we're not skipping those.
Oh,
We did make a bunch of requests already, I will note, but.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's do council requests, and then maybe we'll take a quick break. Vice Mayor?
I would love it if you'd give us an update on the pedestrian safety. You know, this is I'm not sure what number of public comment and, very directed public comments on the safety at West Falls and what we're doing about it. So if you could give us an update. There were some changes made, but it sounds like there's some more to be done. Could you just give us an update, please?
Yes, thank you. So this is pedestrian safety at West Falls. From the beginning of the construction of the West Falls project, having people be able to walk through that site was always a top priority in the entire planning of the project. And so the kind of the key things have been the safe route to school, obviously, but around the perimeter of the project, we kept those sidewalks open as long as we could along Route 7 until the utility wires needed to come down and the actual sidewalks were being built, and then obviously those routes have to be closed. We did do an inspection. There are sign deficiencies. Hoffman put up immediate short-term signs, basically the day that we conducted that inspection, and they have ordered MUTC regulation signs, and those will be installed as soon as they arrive. Wherever that signage is, we want it to be visible, very easy to navigate. I will say that when we had to close the sidewalks, new paths were built, some of them temporary, and when you encounter a blockage in the sidewalk along Route 7, you can see very obviously where the route goes. Now, that might not be the convenient route for someone who's just trying to go straight down Route 7. We acknowledge that. But that is the safe route, is then to go over to Mustang Alley, cut over to Haycock, and then continue that way. The sidewalks are under construction right now, and we're looking very much forward to them being open for the public to use.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? So apart from the signage that gets you into the West Falls project, when you're actually walking through to get back out of where the detour is, one of the comments that we had received was about, like, once you're actually in the complex, that it's not clear because you don't have, like, the arrowed sign paths through the
Right.
entirety of whatever the pedestrian detour is. And so did you find that upon inspection, and is that being rectified?
Yes,
or
that's
okay.
what's being rectified.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, other council requests? Okay, I had one. I think some of us had issues with the Broad and Washington garage. I think navigation out of the public parking spaces. So I don't know whether that's final or whether they are open to feedback to improving access out of that.
I think they've done what they kind of on paper, what was committed to do. We're open to feedback. And so we'll keep working it.
Okay. And I think we'd received a public comment, or maybe it was just a council request, where coming out of the garage onto East Broad, I think maybe they suggested some sort of mirror to help people know when there's pedestrians walking by.
Yeah, I don't know that a mirror is necessary. There was a request for a stop sign right there, which is not was not part of the site plan approval. So we're evaluating that as a potential improvement.
Okay. I had residents of the Gresham neighborhood come to my office hours and ask about the light. And I read that in the council requests, I think it was mentioned that the plan was unsatisfactory and was going to go back to get redesigned. And so I'd love more details on that. They reminded me that it's been over 3 years now since that light is out and they're having challenges doing left turns out.
Yeah, that was the design from the engineering firm in coordination with Arlington. There was an on-site meeting last week with our engineering team, and we're following up next week. Some of it's the coordination with Arlington County.
So at this point, is there a date that we can offer people on when there will be a new design, new equipment, and then ultimately a fix?
I do not have the Smart City schedule in front of me, so I don't want to misspeak, but we do have the planned dates. We're not behind, we just needed to refine it. So the signal installation is first quarter calendar year of 2025, but I'll get back to you on specifics.
So we are going to install new light in calendar year Q1 2025?
Yeah, and it's a phased partial approach to fix the light and help with the timing and the in out of Gresham, but the full intersection improvement is part of the NVTA North Washington CIP project that goes into design in FY26. So it's a two-part process, which we have been communicating with the HOA.
The only thing I would add is, what's frustrating about this is an Arlington County signal. And so kind of the battle has been fundamentally with Arlington County on the operation of this signal. And that has been a very frustrating process. And I think that is the bottom line with it.
I think several of us have made the
And
offer.
it continues to be.
Yeah, to reach out to our counterparts, because I think waiting 3 years for this light to get fixed is really just unacceptable for that neighborhood. And I would agree with that assessment. So please leverage us if we are having challenges with Arlington County. To the extent that we can help, we want to make it better for everybody.
Madam Mayor, I think we were prepared to do that, and then I thought that the talks were going pretty well. I guess they're not. So
Yeah, I think
we see our colleagues frequently, so we'd be pleased to raise it if you
I appreciate that. I think we will follow up with that. It seems a little bit crazy for this to have to go to the board level. We, essentially have offered to take over the whole situation, and there's been resistance to that. And so, we have not gotten a clear path forward yet.
Okay. If we can get updates just so we can get back to the HOA, that would be great. I hate for them to keep having to come to ask us about it. So, okay. Any final council requests before we take a quick 5-minute?
Mayor, I don't want to extend this, but I will. So at the corner of Maple and Great Falls, there was a motor vehicle crash where one of the vehicles, a pickup truck, left the highway, drove over a lawn, smashed into 2 cars in a driveway, went across another lawn, went through the fence of another building, and was only stopped by a retaining wall. It's stop sign. It's just one more example of the stop sign problem, and we are trying to get authority for more enforcement. Are there lights or the other things that we ought to be looking at for stop signs across the city?
Yeah, there are kind of escalations that we can take, flashing lights and things like that. Those do have a neighborhood impact that it is, I think we just have to be mindful of. Bigger signs, obviously, is, we've already done that with that intersection. So those are that's the toolkit, and it is kind of this arms race against bad driving. And there is one other dimension to it, which is, this is a little bit of a controversial topic, but, going back to the question of, for some of these 4-way stops, should it be a 4-way stop? If a lot of times those were put in at neighborhood requests to slow traffic down. But if in fact we're having increases in accidents at a 4-way stop, from an engineering perspective, there might be a recommendation to go back to a 2, to 1 being through.
Let me challenge you a little bit on that. I'm not sure.
I recognize that would be
authorizing the bad behavior and the speeding is a good response either.
I guess where there's an unwarranted stop sign, and if someone runs it, the car that has pulled out in front of that car has done so with a false sense of safety, and that's an issue with sidewalks, with mid-block crossings. That's something that engineers worry about constantly, is that the pedestrian feels like they should be safe because they're in a crosswalk, but in fact, obviously, if the car doesn't stop, it's not. And so these are we're wrestling with this. We hear it every day. You do as well. We'd like to come forward with clear solutions. Some of these are just tough. The neon flashing lights at a stop sign, that is an option, but that's a pretty, I wouldn't want that to be in my front yard either. So those are some of the issues.
Can I ask about that intersection in particular? And I brought this up earlier. Can staff look and see whether having crosswalks on the entirety of that intersection, given that there are sidewalks, there are four, whatever they are, I don't know, 8 sidewalks, I don't know how they come together there, and there are the 4 stop signs, and it's not like it's a sidewalk to nowhere a crosswalk to nowhere, like it's a crosswalk to somewhere for all corners of that intersection.
Right.
And yet the stop signs look different and they appear different to the drivers, even though the people are similarly situated on every single corner of that intersection. And so it may actually help to properly box that out with having crosswalks for the entirety of the box, as opposed to only 2 legs of the box when there are sidewalks on all aspects of the
Right.
box, if that makes sense.
It does
And
make
it may be
sense, yeah.
something short. Yeah, exactly. It may be something short of like the more drastic measures that could actually improve that intersection in particular, since we're dealing with so many issues there.
I just looked on Google Maps. Why do we only have crosswalks on 2 legs?
That's a good, I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay. Because we do have sidewalks on all 4 sides. I know Mr. Snyder put in that new sidewalk, so I think there are indeed sidewalks, which
I'm
has been a-
frequently stranded at the sidewalk that has no crosswalks, which is why I know that this is like an issue. You can be standing at the sidewalk trying to get to the other sidewalk that has curb cuts, because oftentimes you do it to direct where,
where you
to
don't
a
have
curb cut, but there are curb cuts everywhere, and I don't know why there are no crosswalks, so.
Okay, well, maybe we've solved this intersection. I know somebody who has white paint. Okay. Okay, it is 10:21. Can we take a recess? Because we do actually have a number of items, and I was actually going to propose, instead of having the mayor's meeting tomorrow, to go over schedule tonight.
Yeah.
And so the meeting will go a little later if we do schedule. So why don't we take a quick recess until 10:30, so everyone can use the facilities and get a snack, and then we will resume the agenda. Welcome back, everybody. Our camera's still on? I presume so. Are we ready to resume?
We're looking for the cameras, is that what we're checking?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Great. Can you call the first item, Madam Clerk?
Sure. And this is a public hearing and second reading on TO 24-15, ordinance to amend ordinance 2073 regarding the budget of expenditures and revenues and appropriating funds for the fiscal year 2025 general fund, school operating fund, and the capital improvement program funds.
Okay. Before staff jumps in, I think we have a conflict of interest disclosure to make. Ms. Connolly?
Yes. Am I on? Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Mayor Hardy. The City Council is discussing tonight an amendment to the city's adopted FY 2025 budget and a corresponding appropriation of funds to implement that amendment. I am an employee of the Falls Church City School Board, which will be affected by the proposed budget amendment. As a result, I am in a group of 3 or more people who may realize a reasonably foreseeable direct or indirect benefit from the proposed ordinance. After consideration, I am electing to participate in this transaction because I am confident in my ability to participate fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Okay. Are we ready to jump in with the staff updates?
Okay, I will give a very short staff report. And what this is a budget amendment that is deploying funds from last fiscal year, revenue surplus and underspending. There are 3 principal actions that are being undertaken with this budget amendment. One is to cover some capital projects that are underway. Second, to share the revenue surplus with the school division in keeping with the practices of the past 5 years, and to put $1.67 million in capital reserves to address future needs. The major capital projects that are funded includes $1.5 million for the Fellows property and $300,000 to implement the bike designs that were identified in the bike master plan. At line 48 of the staff report is a more detailed itemization of the budget appropriations in this action. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments for staff? This item also requires a public hearing, and so if we don't, I will open up the public hearing. Any members of the public would like to speak to this item?
And I don't have anybody signed up to speak.
Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion then?
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt TO 24-15.
Second.
I think I heard Ms. Hiscott on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Our next item for public hearing is TO 24-16, ordinance to amend Chapter 40 taxation of the Code of the City of Falls Church to codify the local tax rate only for transient occupancy tax.
So this ordinance is before the council on second reading and a public hearing. It makes no change to the city's hotel tax or transient occupancy tax. And it has no fiscal impact to the city. What it does is differentiate between the city tax, which is 6%, and then has a sentence that notes that the state may have its own rate and the city will collect that rate on behalf of the state. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this item.
There have been no changes since first reading.
And there have been no changes since first reading, that's right.
Questions or comments? Okay, I'm also going to open up the public hearing for this. Any members of the public wish to speak? I don't think I see any members of the public here.
And I don't have anybody signed up to speak.
So I'm going to close the public hearing. May I have a motion?
Move to adopt TO 24-16.
Second.
Ms. Flynn on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shawn-Siskott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, council.
I think we're ready now for TR 24-39, since we took care of 38 earlier.
Yes. Resolution, TR 24-39, resolution establishing the Falls Church 250 Committee to support and participate in the Virginia 250 commemoration of the semi-quincentennial of the United States of America.
And we have Holly Irwin, a recreation specialist, is here to present on this item and the upcoming item on council chamber art. Ms. Irwin.
Thank you, Mr. Shields, and thank you, Mayor Hardy and members of council. For those who don't know, my name is Holly Irwin, and I'm the city's Cherry Hill Farmhouse / Arts and Humanities Coordinator. So today I will be speaking on behalf of the creation of a Falls Church 250 committee to commemorate the nation's 250th anniversary on July 4th, 2026. So staff's request for you today is to adopt a resolution to create a Falls Church 250 committee, which will be tasked with planning the commemoration of the United States 250th anniversary in 2026. Any changes to the staff report from last week's work session are noted in gray. The changes that I will bring up based off of council's feedback from the work session is to have a member of the Falls Church City Public Schools School Board be a member for this committee, as well as the superintendent of schools will assign a student representative to act in a liaison capacity. The other notable change is the date the committee will be effective until, and so it will be from now on, January 31st of 2027. It gives staff a chance to debrief with the rest of the committee members to talk about the process, what we learned, how to kind of move forward with other anniversaries and related commemorations in the future, and just overall discuss how well or unwell we all work together. So I will take any comments or questions that you have at this time.
Where's my first page?
Great. Thank you for hanging with us so late. Do we have questions or comments for Ms. Irwin? Thank you for being responsive to the suggestion to add a member of the school board. Okay, do I have a motion then?
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt TR 24-39.
We have a second?
Second.
Ms. Downs, for her first second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shawn-Siskott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. And our next item is TR 24-41, resolution to award contracts to artists for the City Council Portrait Project.
I will just jump right in. So the next item that I will be discussing with you all is the portrait project for this chamber. So council is requested to act upon this resolution at tonight's meeting to award contracts to the artists in Package A, who are Deborah Kahn and Asia Anderson, who were recommended by the Arts and Humanities Council's Public Art Committee for the City Council Chamber Portrait Project. To recap our discussion from last week, you all decided to take the recommendation from the Public Art Committee and select the artists that were in Package A and I don't want to say disregard, but not move forward with the artists that were in Package B. So the artists in Package A, as a reminder, are watercolorists. The Public Art Committee believes that the watercolor portraits will freshen the artistic landscape of the chamber with their vibrancy and brightness. So Deborah Kahn will be tasked with creating a portrait of Carol DeLong, sorry. And staff reached out to Carol DeLong's family and determined the image in the RFQ, so the ones that's in the sketch in the staff report, is the family's preference for capturing DeLong's likeness for the portrait. The family prefers simplicity in the portrait and agrees with council that the microphone should not be included. Moving on to the portrait of Frederick Foote Jr. will be done by artist Asia Anderson, again, who is also a watercolorists. And based off of council feedback from last work session, staff will collaborate with the artist to determine the appropriate background for Frederick Foote Jr.'s portrait, since there were some discussions if Cherry Hill Farmhouse was the correct background. And whether that background will be a business he owned or some other symbolic aspect that pays homage and respect to his history. Overall, staff will ensure that the two new portraits not only complement each other, but also unify and create a cohesive look for the artistic landscape of council chambers. I believe that notes all the changes from last week's work session. Does anyone have any comments or questions for me?
I don't see any up here. We have a motion to adopt.
Move to adopt TR 2441.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Scott on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shonsiskott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, council.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you back. Okay, so moving on to, we have no consent. So moving on to other business.
The first one we have on other business is action soliciting parklet name recommendations from the public and from certain city boards and commissions.
Mr. Shields, who's got this one? Ms. Bazemore.
Emily Bazemore has this one.
Hello again, council. Tonight, council is requested to make a motion to solicit parklet name recommendations from the general public and the following boards and commissions: the Planning Commission, the Historical Commission, the Recreation and Parks Advisory Board, the Arts and Humanities Council, and the Economic Development Authority. The new parklets are located in the city of Falls Church, specifically in the South Washington Street corridor at the following addresses: 190 South Washington Street, 430 South Maple Ave, and 410 South Washington Street. In the staff report, we have a comments matrix reflecting feedback received during last week's work session. Just want to briefly highlight those. So the first comment was support for projects following planning efforts around the Tinner Hill Historic and Cultural District. We also had a comment about thinking broadly about parklet names. I wanted to capture that as well. There were name recommendations brought up, and you will see that reflected in other sections of the staff report. There was also a comment about the document that had recommendations from the council chambers portraits project, and I've received the staff report for that project and have been reviewing the name recs for that. Just briefly want to touch on the other brief changes to the staff report. So names suggested to date on page 4 of the staff report. I've included Ike and Mamie Eisenhower, and also names related to military service, such as the Home Guard, CIA service, State Department, and other civic functions of the local community. Also, on page 5, we have the addition of a legal authority section, and here you can find sections of the Virginia State Code and the City Code. Briefly want to highlight timing again. We are in phase 1, and tonight we're looking for referral out to those different boards and commissions. In November, we also plan to launch our webpage for this project, and then hopefully within the coming months, we'll go to the various boards and commissions to get their feedback on names. That's all from me. Looking forward to your comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We have questions or comments from Ms. Bazemore?
Letty, it's Mary Beth. Just a quick question. Ms. Bazemore, you just said timing, but there weren't any specific times in that timing, were there? Do we have when do we think this project is going to be done?
Yeah, so we're projecting our final city council work session in January and then final action in February.
Okay, so this naming project is a fall
Into
project.
winter, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Do we have a motion?
Move to solicit parklet name recommendations from the general public and the Planning Commission, Historical Commission, Recreation and Parks Advisory Board, the Arts and Humanities Council of Falls Church, and the Economic Development Authority.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I got Vice Mayor Hiscott on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz-Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, council. And the final other business is action directing staff to, 1, analyze and report back on the benefits available to the City of Falls Church mayor and city council members, and 2, schedule for council consideration and action ordinances adopting the council salaries and council benefits, with such action to occur no later than May 2025.
Ms. Gillette?
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Welcome, Councilmember Downs. This item would have council direct staff to perform an analysis of the benefits that are available to employees and to analyze that in the context of providing those benefits to council members. If council were separately and additionally, this item would carry forward council's consideration and create a schedule for council's consideration of a salary increase that was authorized by the General Assembly this last session of 2024. The motion before you sets forth some important dates that are important to particularly the salary component of this item. In order to meet the deadlines, the statutory deadlines that the General Assembly has established for those salary adjustments. And the two items, the benefit item and the salary item, we proposed they track concurrently if you'd like, but it's not necessary that they track concurrently. But we do recommend, because they have separate adoption requirements, that they be adopted as separate ordinances. So the benefits, I didn't include this in the staff report. It occurs to me that I believe the open enrollment for benefits is in the April timeframe. So under this schedule, with the two ordinances running concurrently, I believe the benefits portion of this could be adopted in time for open enrollment. So with that, I turn it back to you for any questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Lynn.
I noticed in the staff report that there's seemingly a draft ordinance attached, and, I've before talked on this in terms of the salary and maximum salary and reservations I have about increasing council salaries to that maximum amount, especially since we also need to take up the conversation of benefits, and there are, costs attendant to both of those. And so I was just wondering about this language in particular, and whether our vote tonight on the proposed motion sort of drew along with it what is seemingly this ordinance language, or if that was just there as kind of an illustration of what an ordinance might look like when we have a further work session on this, and it comes back to us with kind of all of the costs across the board more apparent in terms of what this means for, financial decisions. Because when I think about something like last year, we had the budget conversation about that $65,000 and trying to find $65,000 to fund the library for an additional, hour each weekend for an entire year. And we're talking about, benefits, and then we're talking about something like, close to a $70,000 kind of increase if we go to the maximum for council salary, separate and apart from, that discussion about what the role is, how the salaries reflect or, don't reflect that. But regardless of that, I just want to make sure that, we're taking into account how these costs, do come from the same overall revenues of programs that we also need to fund.
Thank you for that question. The ordinance that's in front of you is not being adopted as part of this motion. It is, the motion would merely initiate an analysis of the benefits and have it come back to council for consideration of the costs and first the options for benefits and then the cost associated with each of those options. And this motion would also direct that council schedule at a later meeting, not tonight, a public hearing on the ordinance for benefits and also the ordinance for salary. So the ordinance attached would be an example of an ordinance if you were to choose to adopt the maximum salaries allowed under law, but it is not an ordinance that you're acting upon tonight in any way.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Other questions? Comments? Vice Mayor?
I was ready to propose the motion, but I didn't want to preclude anybody from asking any questions they had.
Mr. Snyder?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So I have some mixed feelings about this. I'm not sure exactly how this is going to be read by the public, but I think we're potentially facing upheaval in this region as a result of the new administration. And this would be, if it's read as we're going to raise our salaries, this would probably not, this would not be a good environment in which to do that. So I'm going to abstain from this. I do think we need to have a clear enactment with regard to the benefits. But talking about raising his salary right now in this environment, I'm concerned about how that would be read. Thanks.
Ms. Connolly?
Thanks, Mayor Hardy. One of the things I'd like in this analysis is a history of council's salary over the last, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, I don't know. Because it seems that it was low for a very long time, artificially low unnecessarily. And while this does seem like a large leap, as Ms. Flynn said, I wonder if in proportion to inflation or in the grand scheme of things, had we been doing small incremental increases, we would be far above $20,000 a year. So I feel like that's an important part of the context, is the arc of council payments. And then additionally, because this is a state, we know that others that are doing similar jobs have full staffs to do those jobs. So one of the things I really would like to keep in mind is that as the staff member, or as the council members elected by the people to serve the people, there's no full staff that we have that some of our other jurisdictions do have. So we are doing a large job of decision making as well as a lot of the other stuff all by ourselves with the support of staff for some of the decision-making, but not for the day-to-day logistics.
Okay. I liked your suggestion, Ms. Conley, about the historical look of salaries.
Could I make one more request for when this comes back to us? And that's just guidance on, so under the state code provision that we're acting pursuant to, 15.2-1414.6, provision F, I would just be interested in learning more about. It says, any member of a council shall be eligible to be reimbursed for any personal expenses incurred by him for official business. However, all claims for reimbursement shall be for reasonable expenses to the extent permitted by law incurred in the conduct of official city business, shall be itemized and documented by stamp paid receipts to the extent feasible. So in terms of that paragraph, we've been before talked about the need for the salary increase, for example, to offset, costs people incur for being at city meetings, for example. And I would just be interested in, if a person incurs expenses by virtue of their needing to attend a city meeting, can they possibly, be reimbursed for those expenses separate and apart for any need for a corresponding across-the-board salary increase? It seems as though it's sort of a safety valve of sorts so that people aren't, bearing out-of-pocket costs to do official business. So I'd just be interested in that provision as well.
Mary Beth has her hand up again.
Mary Beth, is your hand still up or new one?
Sorry, no, that was before.
Ms. Hardy.
Go ahead, Ms. Downs.
Yeah, so I obviously watched your conversation when I was a candidate, and it is really interesting, and I understand Mr. Snyder's comments, definitely. But I also, think about, as, we look to encourage more people to run for office, and, some of the, childcare issues, what have you, some of the costs that go along with that. Would it encourage more people to consider running, is my thought. And, looking at how, like on line 34, talking about we would do the public hearing, then the council vote, then a general election. So it does, it does, we're not necessarily, my understanding is if we as a group decided to approve a salary increase, it would be before the election, right? And then some of us may not even benefit from that because we may decide not to run again. So, I do think that helps a little bit to show, like, this is not something that we're necessarily trying to, line our pockets or what have you. But I think anything we can do to encourage more people to run and more people from diverse backgrounds, and it could be single parents, and I remember when Erin Gill was on school board, she had little kids, and so I think that it is something that we should consider more for just the future of this body. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Do we have a motion then?
I move that the City Council direct staff to develop an analysis of employment benefits that could be made available to City Council and schedule such analysis for consideration by Council no later than its meeting on February 24th, 2025. That City Council directs staff to schedule first reading of the salary ordinance for such a date that the public hearing occurs no later than the last regular council meeting in May 2025, and that the establishment of City Council salaries and City Council benefits occur through separate ordinances that are processed concurrently.
Second. I think I heard Ms. Underhill in the second.
Okay, sorry. Can I make a friendly amendment to this? And my amendment would just be in the language to make clear that we are taking this up for consideration, but that there's been sort of no final decision on whether the salaries or the benefits are warranted given the cost implications, or whether both of them would be, warranted. That where it says that City Council direct staff to schedule first reading of the salary ordinance for such a date that the public hearing occurs. Could we amend that to say that any public hearing occurs no later than the last regular council meeting in May 2025, so that this doesn't read like sort of a done deal, so to speak, as opposed to something that we're going to take up when we see the cost implications for both benefits and salary?
So the amendment is to change the to the word, the word the to the word any?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you accept the amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we accept the amendment, we don't need to vote on the amendment? Is that how?
No, it's not a substitute motion, so I think it's okay that the word any be substituted for the word the.
Okay. So we had a motion, a second, and then a friendly amendment was accepted. So can we call for the vote?
Let's see. Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz-Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
No.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all the official business. Do we have business not on the agenda, committee or liaison reports or comments? And then we're going to get to schedule at the end if we're ready for that. Vice Mayor?
Just a quick report out that the Community Criminal Justice Board met again last week, and in attendance were the chief, the deputy chief, the sheriff, and I represented City Council. And we also had a community member from Falls Church who has a incredibly interesting background and participated as as a public meeting, and then I believe is submitted his name to be considered for our resident.
We do have an application.
Yeah, an application in for that as well. So we'll have resident representation on that board as well. And the strategic plan will be occurring over the course of 2025. The discussion is primarily focused to date on how to better serve the unhoused, rather, defer and deflect from the criminal justice system to get proper treatment and to relieve the pressures on the criminal justice system for serving those who aren't, violent offenders who are mainly arrested because they are unhoused, and the indignities that are associated with that. So I just want to give a report that that is in motion, and we have strong participation from our city staff and residents.
Thank you for restarting that with Arlington. Other comments? Ms. Flynn?
I had a liaison question in terms of my role with Aurora House, and I just received this later, so apologies for not bringing it up during council requests. But apparently at tonight's Aurora House meeting, it came up again that the oven hasn't been working particularly well at Aurora House. And I think that there have been some delays, and, obviously with it being a residence for the girls, who live there, the advisory committee and staff want to make sure that, they're able to properly cook and prepare meals on site, and so that there isn't any delay. And it's also my understanding that the DJJ audit may be coming up, and so it's important, to get out ahead of this issue. So any follow-up you could do as soon as possible on that issue, I'd appreciate.
Okay, Mr. Snyder?
Sure, thanks a lot. Two quick ones. First of all, I want to especially compliment Laura Downs and John Murphy for running campaigns that were both comprehensive and within a timetable that, to say the least, was truncated. So congratulations for both of you coming forward, and congratulations to Laura for winning. Second really is more of a question. Congressman Jerry Connolly announced, I guess a week or so ago, that he had cancer, and I'm wondering if it might be appropriate to send a note from the city council just extending our best wishes to him. Jerry has done a lot for the region that's benefited the city of Falls Church, so just a thought. Thank you.
Certainly. If staff could help us with that, that would be terrific.
I can work with Cindy on that if you'd like.
We'd be happy to. Yeah.
I have one last thing as an upcoming just announcement. So VPIS has its fall membership meeting this Sunday, I guess November 17th. The public is welcome to it. It's from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Falls Church Episcopal. And the speakers, the theme is protecting and expanding our tree canopy. So learn about local and regional goals and initiatives to achieve them. And the speakers are Heidi Bonifin, who's with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments and on their regional tree canopy subcommittee. So that, goes with the tree canopy goals that the region set, along with some of the region forward kind of work around this issue. And then the other speaker is Mary Glass, who's the director of the Arlington Tree Connection. So for folks interested in that issue, that will be this Sunday at 3 o'clock.
So just a quick thing for me. So I know that this is, I think, our first official meeting after the election. So again, welcome to Laura and congratulations. Thank you to staff and I think all the election officials who helped us run some safe and fair elections. I think there's certainly a lot of uncertainty at the national level. And sort of bringing multiple points, I think, between what Dave said about, there could be a lot of financial and social impacts happening that comes down from the federal level, which I think emphasizes the role of local government, local and state government really needing to keep it together. So I'm grateful in advance for all the collaboration from my colleagues up here. But I think a request for staff and for us is to kind of pay attention to both, I think, budgets as well, budgets at the local level, as well as impacts to the finances of our residents and our businesses. There's a lot of uncertainty around that, so it's something that I think we'll need to work regionally on and keep an eye on, especially as we look to the FY26 budget, needing potentially be a little more conservative than we otherwise may be, not knowing how things will shake out. So that's at least my mindset. I think we're hearing from lots of people with that same concern.
Yep.
I think also on just listening to the CIP and thinking about tariffs and what that's going to do to potential imports of building materials that, we're planning on at a certain rate over the next, our next 6 year of CIP. That's something that I'm particularly keen on making sure we track as well, so we get ahead of that to the extent possible. I mean, there's only so much we can do, but that's a thought I've been having too.
Okay. So schedule. Let's try to get it in and not have to meet again in 9 hours.
So one thing I'll note then on the schedule, we have Budget and Finance Committee on Friday. We'll be talking about financial policies, but also we'll be talking about the first quarter financial report. Follow up to the discussion of just a moment ago, first data on this fiscal year. On the next work session, we'll discuss those financial policies together. We'll be joined by Davenport, and they'll talk about some of the regional comps for some of the policy standards that we have compared to other jurisdictions. We'll talk about the General Assembly, first looking backwards in terms of state code changes that we could need to respond to here, and then looking ahead to the next session for the LEDGE program. And then the rest of the items are not terribly difficult to get through. One thing I will note, we have been listing the sanitary sewer purchase agreement on this agenda. We're going through the legal review on that, and we're thinking this date might slip. If that happens, it slips all the way to January, because this is our last work session. So I'll just note that we're actively working this issue, but I think that schedule could be impacted as I've just described. Looking ahead to the 25th, we'd have our reception for our incoming council member, and that'll be at 6:30. And we'll have a photo at 7, and then the meeting gets underway at 7:30. We would have accessory dwellings for a public hearing and an initiating resolution and consideration of first reading.
It's not a public hearing, though.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you. That comes later. Financial policies resolution, the LEDGE program, then these other smaller items. Well, I should say the employee holiday schedule, that's not a small item, that's a very important item. December 2nd, that's joint. We do have the EDC meeting and the GovOps committee meeting on the 27th. So GovOps, we are planning to talk about the employee survey work group results as well as the vacancy report. December 2nd, joint session with the school board, budget planning. And we'll discuss budget guidance and then have that carry forward to December 9th with budget guidance. That financial policies, I think those have already been adopted by that point, so I'll strike that. We would have a work session on December 9th on the affordable living policy and on Virginia Village. And January 6th, come back and dig into the comp plan amendment on affordable living. Initiate and start considering the initiating resolution for that comp plan amendment. Talk about safe streets, tactics, and data.
May I interrupt just briefly? We will definitely be canceling the Government Operations Committee on December 25th.
Oh, that's right. That's still on here.
Just cancel. We're not trying to reschedule.
Well, we're canceling it on that date, but our December Government Operations Committee work is a 6-month review with staff, mid-year check-in. So we'll schedule those according to plans, and those are not public because they're discussing their closed sessions. So if we could work to schedule those in December, Celeste, that would be great. Thank you.
And probably not have a agenda meeting on January 1st either.
Yeah.
Or ask the council.
Okay. So the 13th, the parklet naming will come back to you. The retirement board will join you for that meeting for their annual report. On the 21st, final work session on accessory dwellings, towing ordinance, and we'd like to have a scoping discussion. We have new authorities under state law and have a discussion with council about which of those authorities or all of them we want to use and as we start drafting code language and then engaging with the towing advisory board. And we'll talk about the brick crosswalk and sidewalk standards. January 27th, bike master plan comes back. Formal action on the first step in the comp plan amendment for the affordable living policy and referring that out to boards and commissions. Council action to adopt a new standard on brick crosswalks and sidewalks if that is ready to go. I think those are probably the key things to note.
We've talked about scheduling a time to talk about the sidewalk memo, like the prioritized.
Yeah.
Like, is that, given that we're talking brick crosswalks and sidewalks, could we do it at January 27th?
Yeah, I think that would be a good date to do that. We'll do that. How about the January 21st work session?
Yep.
Can I ask for, in connection with the November GovOps meeting, and I think maybe we were already planning on doing this, can we have another one of the staffing snapshots, especially in the context of sort of the CIP and the council initiatives, just to understand, what open positions there are, how certain departments are staffed, and how that may affect the schedule on some of those going forward?
Yes, we'll have that.
Other scheduling things? Okay. I think that's all we've got in us tonight.
Mayor Hardy, could I just say one thing? I should have said before, but I just wanted to give a public thank you to Dave Berkey and his staff. I've been sort of joking that, and thank you, Mr. Snyder, for those nice comments, but I've told quite a few people that early voting is great for the voters, but it's not great for the candidates or the elections office. It is, when you start when people start voting September 20th, his office had to be, having voters come in every day. And then, of course, over the weekends and things. And so just having been at those early voting polls and watching Dave and his staff work so hard, I just wanted to put a public thank you out there for them. They did a great job. Thanks.
+1 on that. Great. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, let's adjourn this meeting.
All right. Thank you, council.
Good night, all.